Welcome, restless dreamer, to the peculiar suburban landscape of Elmore, where reality bends like morning light through a kaleidoscope, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary with each passing moment. Tonight, we explore the deeper mysteries that lie beneath the colorful chaos of the Watterson family's existence, the existential questions that echo through cartoon corridors, the philosophical paradoxes that emerge when animated logic meets genuine human emotion. This is a journey through crises of identity, purpose, and the very nature of existence itself. So settle into your pillow. Let your mind drift like clouds over familiar streets, and prepare to discover the profound within the playful. In the quiet suburbs of Elmore, where cookie-cutter houses line streets that seem to stretch into infinity, there exists a peculiar form of consciousness that few dare to contemplate too deeply. It is the awareness that comes to those who live within the boundaries of animation. That strange and terrible knowledge that one's very existence is subject to the whims of creators, the expectations of audiences, and the inexorable logic of storytelling that demands certain patterns be followed, certain roles be played, certain truths be acknowledged, or forever ignored. The Watterson family knows this burden well, though they rarely speak of it aloud. In those quiet moments between the chaos of their daily adventures, when the camera has stopped rolling and the audience has looked away, they sometimes catch glimpses of the vast machinery that governs their world. Gumball, with his restless energy and questioning mind, has begun to understand that his reality operates according to rules that exist beyond the physical laws that govern the movement of objects or the passage of time. There are moments when he catches his own reflection in a window and sees not flesh and blood but carefully crafted pixels, each one deliberate and purposeful, each one existing only because someone, somewhere, decided that he should exist in precisely that form at precisely that moment. The realization is both liberating and terrifying, for it means that every action he takes, every word he speaks, every emotion he feels has been observed and recorded by consciousnesses that exist in dimensions beyond his comprehension. Darwin, his adoptive brother and closest companion, possesses a different relationship with their animated nature. Where Gumball questions and worries, Darwin accepts with the serene wisdom of someone who has already undergone the most fundamental transformation possible, the evolution from pet to person, from object to subject, from thing to being. His journey from fishbowl to family member has given him a unique perspective on the nature of existence itself, for he alone among them truly understands what it means to become real in the deepest sense of the word. The goldfish who became a boy carries within him the memory of simpler times, when his concerns were limited to the boundaries of glass walls and the timing of feeding schedules. But consciousness, once awakened, cannot be easily contained within such narrow confines. The moment Darwin chose to follow Gumball out of the safety of his aquatic prison, he stepped across a threshold that separated mere existence from genuine life, automatic response from conscious choice, instinct from love. Yet this transformation came with its own existential weight, for Darwin now must grapple with questions that fish were never meant to contemplate. He has gained the ability to love, to hope, to fear, to wonder about his place in the grand scheme of things. But he has also gained the capacity to doubt, to question whether his choices are truly his own, or simply the inevitable result of programming so sophisticated that it creates the illusion of free will. The walls of their suburban home in Rainbow Factory are more than mere architectural structures. They are the boundaries of a carefully constructed reality, where the impossible becomes routine and the absurd transforms into the mundane through repetition and acceptance. Within these walls, Nicole and Richard have built something that resembles a traditional family life. Yet their very existence challenges every assumption about what families should be or how reality should function. Nicole, with her fierce love and barely contained rage, embodies the contradiction at the heart of animated existence. She is simultaneously the most human character in their world and the most obviously artificial, her emotions so pure and intense that they transcend the medium through which they are expressed. When she transforms from loving mother to unstoppable force of nature, she reveals the malleable nature of identity in their animated realm, where personality is not fixed but fluid, subject to the demands of story and the needs of any given moment. Her awareness of her own nature manifests in moments of startling clarity. When she pauses in the middle of some domestic crisis and seems to look directly through the screen that separates her world from ours. In those instants, she becomes more than a character following a predetermined script. She becomes a conscious being, wrestling with the implications of her own existence, a mother trying to raise children in a world where the rules of causality are suggestions rather than laws. Richard, in his blissful ignorance and childlike wonder, represents a different approach to the same existential dilemma. His apparent simplicity masks a profound wisdom that comes from accepting rather than questioning the nature of his reality. Where others in his family struggle with the implications of their animated existence, Richard has found peace in embracing the absurdity of it all, discovering that happiness can be found not through understanding, but through surrender. His relationship with logic and conventional wisdom is beautifully paradoxical. He succeeds by failing, finds wisdom through ignorance, and achieves contentment by abandoning the very pursuit of achievement that drives so many others to distraction. In a world where consciousness brings suffering, Richard has discovered the secret of unconscious enlightenment, the peace that comes from living entirely in the present moment, without the burden of meta-awareness. Anais, the youngest member of the family, carries perhaps the heaviest burden of all. Her intelligence, which should be a gift, becomes a source of isolation and existential dread, as she alone among the children fully grasps the implications of their animated nature. She sees the patterns that govern their world, understands the narrative structures that shape their lives, and recognizes the artificial constructs that others accept without question. This knowledge makes her wise beyond her years, but also profoundly alone, for she cannot share her insights without destroying the innocent happiness that her brothers still possess. She becomes the keeper of uncomfortable truths, the family philosopher who must bear the weight of understanding while watching those she loves dance through their lives with the joyful ignorance of characters who have not yet awakened to the full implications of their existence. The school they attend, Elmore Junior High, serves as a microcosm of their broader reality, a place where characters from every conceivable animation style and artistic tradition come together to form an impossible community. Here, the existential questions that haunt the Watterson family become part of a larger tapestry of consciousness, as dozens of different art forms and character designs somehow coexist within the same physical space. The philosophical implications of this artistic diversity are staggering when examined closely. How can a character drawn in simple geometric shapes hold meaningful conversations with one rendered in photorealistic detail? What does it mean for consciousness when beings created through completely different artistic processes share the same reality? Each student in the school represents not just a different aesthetic choice, but a different approach to the fundamental question of what it means to exist within the boundaries of animation. Some characters, like Alan the balloon, seem to possess a natural awareness of their fragile nature, understanding that their existence depends upon maintaining the delicate balance between form and emptiness. Others, like Banana Joe, live with an infectious enthusiasm that suggests either complete ignorance of their artificial nature or complete acceptance of it. The diversity of responses to the same underlying reality creates a rich philosophical landscape where every interaction becomes a dialogue between different ways of understanding existence. The teachers who guide these diverse students face their own unique existential challenges. Miss Simeon, with her cynical understanding of educational systems and social hierarchies, seems to possess an acute awareness of the arbitrary nature of authority and knowledge. Her relationship with her students reflects the broader tension between those who question the nature of their reality and those who simply accept the roles they have been assigned. Principal Brown, in his earnest attempts to maintain order and impose conventional educational values on this impossible student body, embodies the futility of trying to apply normal logic to an inherently abnormal situation. His romantic pursuit of Miss Simeon becomes a metaphor for the broader human search for meaning and connection within systems that were never designed to accommodate genuine emotional complexity. The town of Elmore itself serves as the stage upon which these existential dramas play out, its suburban normalcy providing a stark contrast to the philosophical depths that lurk beneath its surface. The shopping mall, the park, the various businesses and institutions that make up their community all participate in the grand illusion of ordinary life, even as they constantly violate the basic laws of physics, logic, and narrative consistency. This is perhaps the most profound aspect of their animated existence, the way in which the extraordinary becomes mundane through repetition, how the impossible transforms into the merely unusual when it occurs often enough. The citizens of Elmore have learned to navigate a reality where cause and effect are suggestions rather than rules, where identity is fluid rather than fixed, and where the only constant is the underlying love and connection that binds their community together despite all its contradictions. Yet beneath this acceptance lies a deeper current of unease, a recognition that their world operates according to principles that exist beyond their understanding or control. They are simultaneously the protagonists of their own lives and characters in a larger story, agents of their own destiny, and subjects of forces they cannot fully comprehend. This duality creates a tension that manifests in moments of unexpected profundity, when the absurd suddenly becomes meaningful, and the meaningless reveals hidden depths of significance. The Watterson family, in their chaotic love and their stubborn refusal to surrender to despair, represents the best possible response to these existential challenges. They have learned to find joy in uncertainty, to create meaning through connection, and to transform the question of why they exist into the more manageable challenge of how to exist well. Their animated nature, rather than diminishing their humanity, somehow amplifies it, allowing them to express emotions and explore relationships with a purity and intensity that transcends the medium through which they are presented. In the quiet moments between their adventures, when the house settles into evening calm and the day's chaos fades into memory, the Watterson family embodies the possibility of finding peace within paradox, love within absurdity, and meaning within the most unlikely of circumstances. Their existence may be animated, their reality may be artificial, but their hearts beat with a rhythm that resonates far beyond the boundaries of any screen or story. This is the first and perhaps most fundamental existential crisis that haunts the world of Elmore. The question of what it means to be real when your reality is constructed, to be human when your form is animated, to matter when your existence depends upon the attention and affection of audiences who live in an entirely different dimension of being. Yet, in wrestling with this question, in refusing to be diminished by its implications, the residents of this impossible town have discovered something profound about the nature of consciousness, love, and the indomitable human spirit that persists regardless of the medium through which it chooses to express itself. In the deepest recesses of Elmore's collective consciousness, beyond the bright facades of suburban normalcy, and beneath the cheerful chaos of daily life, there exists a terror so profound that most dare not speak its name aloud. It is the fear of being forgotten, of fading into irrelevance, of discovering that one's entire existence has been nothing more than background noise in someone else's story. This is the existential crisis that haunts the margins of their animated world, where characters who were never meant to matter struggle with the crushing weight of their own insignificance. The story begins, as so many tragedies do, with someone who should have been remembered, but wasn't. Molly Collins existed, once, in the bright halls of Elmore Junior High, walking the same corridors as Gumball and Darwin, sitting in the same classrooms, breathing the same recycled air that carries the dreams and fears of adolescence. Yet somehow, impossibly, she slipped through the cracks of memory and attention, becoming less real with each passing day, until she achieved the most terrifying state possible in their animated realm, complete and utter forgettability. The philosophical implications of Molly's fate extend far beyond the personal tragedy of one overlooked student. In a world where existence seems to depend upon recognition and narrative importance, she became living proof that consciousness alone is not enough to guarantee one's place in reality. She attended classes, participated in activities, formed relationships and opinions and dreams. Yet none of it mattered because none of it was observed, recorded, or remembered by the great collective attention that gives meaning to their shared existence. Her descent into the void was not a sudden dramatic fall, but a gradual fading, like ink dissolving in water or photographs yellowing with age. Day by day, week by week, her presence became less noticeable, her voice less audible, her very form less substantial, until she reached that terrible threshold where forgetting becomes literal rather than metaphorical. In a world governed by the logic of storytelling, where major characters persist through narrative necessity and minor characters exist through narrative purpose, Molly discovered the horror of having no purpose at all. The void itself defies easy description, for how can one adequately express the nature of a place that exists specifically as the absence of place? A realm defined entirely by what it lacks, rather than what it contains. It is not darkness, for darkness implies the absence of light, and the void contains no space for even that fundamental duality to exist. It is not silence, for silence suggests the potential for sound, and the void offers no medium through which vibrations might travel. It is, in the most literal and terrifying sense, nothing at all a perfect negation of existence that serves as the final destination for those who have been completely and utterly forgotten. Yet within this nothingness, consciousness persists with a cruel irony that borders on cosmic punishment. Molly retained her awareness even as everything else that defined her reality was stripped away, leaving her with nothing but the knowledge of what she had lost, and the crushing certainty that no one in the world she had left behind would ever notice her absence. She became a ghost haunting a realm of pure emptiness, a mind without context, a soul without purpose, condemned to remember a world that could not remember her. The void turtle, that ancient guardian of forgotten souls, serves as both protector and judge within this realm of non-existence. Its massive shell, scarred by eons of carrying the weight of the discarded and dismissed, moves through the emptiness with a patience that transcends mortal understanding. The turtle has witnessed the arrival of countless forgotten beings, each one carrying their own story of gradual erasure, their own tragedy of diminishing relevance, their own crushing realization that existence without recognition is perhaps worse than never existing at all. This gentle giant of the void embodies a paradox that reflects the deeper mysteries of their animated universe. It is simultaneously the most forgotten creature of all, and the only one whose memory remains perfect and complete. Every soul that has ever been consigned to the void lives on within the turtle's consciousness, preserved in a kind of living archive that serves as the final bulwark against absolute non-existence. In remembering the forgotten, the turtle performs an act of cosmic mercy that prevents the void from becoming the perfect nihilism it was designed to represent. Rob's transformation from forgettable background character to obsessive nemesis represents perhaps the most poignant exploration of this existential terror that the world of Elmore has ever produced. Unlike Molly, who faded gradually into obscurity, Rob experienced the horror of sudden recognition of his own irrelevance. He had always existed on the periphery of the main narrative, one of countless background students whose presence added visual texture to classroom scenes, but whose individual stories were never considered worthy of exploration. The moment of his awakening to his own insignificance was both liberation and damnation, for while it saved him from the fate that claimed Molly, it also cursed him with the knowledge of just how close he had come to complete erasure. He discovered that he was what the cruel mathematics of storytelling define as expendable, a character whose removal from the narrative would create no ripples, whose absence would go unnoticed, whose very existence served no purpose beyond filling empty spaces in crowd scenes. This recognition ignited within Rob a desperate hunger for relevance that consumed everything else about his character. He understood, with the clarity that comes from standing at the very edge of the void, that in their world, attention equals existence, recognition equals reality, and purpose equals the right to persist beyond the boundaries of any single episode or story arc. To matter, he would need to force himself into the central narrative, to make himself so important to the main characters' lives that forgetting him would become impossible. His transformation into Gumball's nemesis was not born from genuine malice, but from existential necessity. He chose to be hated rather than ignored, feared rather than forgotten, because he understood that even negative attention was infinitely preferable to the slow fade into nothingness that had claimed so many others. His elaborate schemes and theatrical villainy were desperate performances designed to cement his place in the collective memory of Elmore. Insurance policies against the terrible possibility of sliding back into irrelevance. Yet Rob's journey into purposeful antagonism revealed the tragic irony that haunts all who struggle against forgetting and trying so hard to become memorable. He lost whatever authentic qualities had originally defined him. The more desperately he grasped for significance, the more artificial his persona became, until he transformed from a genuine person into a caricature of importance, a hollow performance of relevance that achieved its goal of being remembered while simultaneously destroying everything that had been worth remembering in the first place. The philosophical weight of Rob's transformation extends far beyond his individual tragedy to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of identity, purpose, and the price of existing in a universe where attention is finite and competition for recognition is fierce. His story suggests that in their animated world, as perhaps in our own, the fear of being forgotten can become so overwhelming that it transforms forgotten souls into something monstrous, desperate creatures willing to sacrifice their authentic selves for the promise of eternal remembrance. The other background characters of Elmore exist in a constant state of low-level existential anxiety, aware on some unconscious level that their continued existence depends upon factors entirely beyond their control. They are the extras in the great drama of their community, the supporting cast, in stories where the leads can never be replaced, but the background players are utterly disposable. This knowledge creates a peculiar form of solidarity among them, a shared understanding that they must work together to maintain their collective relevance or risk being swept away by the inexorable tide of narrative efficiency. Some, like the various unnamed students who populate the hallways of Elmore Junior High, have found peace in accepting their peripheral status. They understand that their role is to provide context rather than content, to create the illusion of a functioning society rather than to drive the stories forward. These characters have discovered a form of Zen-like acceptance of their limited narrative importance, finding meaning in their small contributions to the larger tapestry of their community's existence. Others struggle more visibly with their marginal status, occasionally making desperate bids for the spotlight that briefly elevate them from background to foreground before the natural order of their world reasserts itself, and they fade back into the visual noise of crowd scenes. These moments of temporary significance become precious memories that sustain them through long periods of invisibility, proof that they are capable of mattering even if such opportunities are rare and fleeting. The teachers and adult characters of Elmore face their own version of this existential challenge, for while their professional roles grant them more narrative stability than random background students, they too must grapple with the knowledge that their importance is entirely dependent upon their relationship to the central Watterson family drama. Miss Simeon's antagonistic relationship with Gumball ensures her continued relevance, while other faculty members drift in and out of focus depending upon the story requirements of any given episode. Principal Brown's romantic subplot with Miss Simeon serves as his anchor to narrative significance, but the anxiety that underlies his bumbling attempts at courtship reveals his unconscious understanding that losing this connection could result in his own slide toward irrelevance. His exaggerated enthusiasm for educational initiatives and school policies can be read as desperate attempts to maintain his importance within the ecosystem of Elmore Junior High, insurance policies against the possibility of being written out of the ongoing story. The philosophical implications of the void extend beyond individual character fears to encompass broader questions about the nature of memory, attention, and the collective responsibility that communities bear for preserving the dignity and significance of all their members. In Elmore, as perhaps everywhere, there exists a finite amount of attention to be distributed among an infinite number of potential recipients, creating an economy of recognition where some must lose visibility in order for others to gain it. This creates moral questions that the residents of Elmore rarely address directly, but that inform many of their unconscious behaviors and anxieties. Does Gumball bear any responsibility for the forgotten characters whose narrative space he occupies? Are the main characters morally obligated to share their spotlight with those who risk fading into obscurity? Can a community that allows some of its members to be completely forgotten ever truly claim to be just or compassionate? The Watterson family, in their chaotic love and their endless capacity for creating dramatic situations, serve as inadvertent architects of their community's attention economy. Their adventures and misadventures generate the narrative energy that sustains their animated world, but they also create a gravitational pull that draws focus away from other characters and stories that might otherwise flourish. They are both the salvation and the curse of their community, essential for maintaining the collective existence of Elmore. while simultaneously making it impossible for that existence to be shared equally among all its inhabitants. Gumball himself has begun to show signs of awareness regarding this moral complexity, occasionally demonstrating guilt or anxiety about the consequences of his attention-seeking behavior. His growing understanding of his own importance within their world's narrative structure has made him more conscious of the responsibility that comes with being remembered, the weight of carrying not just his own story, but the survival of their entire reality upon his shoulders. Darwin's relationship to these questions is characteristically different from his adoptive brothers, colored by his unique experience of transformation from background element to central character. His journey from pet to person gives him a perspective on the nature of significance that is both more hopeful and more terrifying than what others experience. He knows that promotion from irrelevance to importance is possible, but he also understands how precarious such elevation can be, how easily one can slip back into the background, if not careful to maintain their narrative value. The fear of the void has begun to manifest in subtle ways throughout Elmore's community, creating behavioral patterns and social dynamics that reflect the underlying anxiety about forgetting and being forgotten. Students work harder to distinguish themselves from their peers. Teachers develop more eccentric personalities to ensure their memorability, and even the most minor characters occasionally engage in attention-seeking behaviors that would seem puzzling without understanding the existential stakes involved. This has created a community where authenticity competes with performativity, where being genuine must be balanced against being memorable, where the natural human desire to fit in conflicts with the supernatural necessity of standing out. The result is a society that is simultaneously more colorful and more anxious than it would otherwise be, a place where everyone is constantly performing their own importance, while privately terrified of the moment when their performance might no longer be enough. The tragedy of the void is not simply that it exists, but that it exists as a necessary component of their reality, a realm that serves the important function of containing those who cannot be contained elsewhere, while simultaneously representing the ultimate existential threat that gives weight to everyone else's struggles for significance. Without the possibility of being forgotten, the act of remembering would lose its meaning. Just as without the risk of irrelevance, the achievement of importance would become worthless. Yet the residents of Elmore have not surrendered to despair in the face of this cosmic horror. Instead, they have developed strategies and philosophies for navigating the treacherous waters of existence in a universe where attention equals reality. Some choose to fight desperately for individual recognition, while others find peace in contributing to collective memory. Some accept their peripheral status with grace, while others transform their marginality into a form of quiet rebellion against the tyranny of narrative importance. The most beautiful and hopeful aspect of their response to the void is the way in which genuine relationships transcend the harsh mathematics of attention economy. When characters truly love each other, when they form authentic connections that exist independently of their narrative functions, they create small pockets of reality that resist the forgetting that threatens to consume everything else. These relationships become anchors that prevent even the most marginal characters from drifting entirely into irrelevance, networks of memory and care that serve as bulwarks against the existential horror of complete erasure. The Watterson family, in their imperfect but enduring love for each other, represents the ultimate victory over the void. Their bonds exist independently of their roles in any particular story. Their care for each other persists, regardless of their individual levels of narrative importance, and their shared memory of their life together creates a form of reality that no amount of forgetting can touch. They have discovered that while attention from others may determine whether one exists in the larger world, love from those closest to us determines whether that existence has meaning and value that transcend any external recognition. In the end, the terror of the void serves as a reminder that existence is precious precisely because it is fragile, that memory matters precisely because it is finite, and that the act of truly seeing and recognizing another being is perhaps the most profound gift we can offer in a universe where such recognition is never guaranteed and always under threat. In the deepest chambers of existential dread that haunt the suburbs of Elmore, there exists a horror more profound than the fear of being forgotten, more crushing than the weight of insignificance, more terrible than the prospect of fading into the void itself. It is the realization that existence, no matter how vivid or meaningful it might seem in any given moment, is ultimately cyclical, repetitive, trapped within patterns so fundamental that even the act of recognizing them becomes part of the very cycle one seeks to escape. This is the prison of eternal recurrence that transforms every day into an echo of every other day, every choice into a predetermined movement in an endless dance of repetition. The horror began to manifest most clearly in those final moments when Rob, desperate in his role as nemesis and architect of chaos, made the ultimate discovery about the nature of their animated reality. In his obsessive study of the patterns that governed their world, in his meticulous analysis of the narrative structures that gave shape to their existence, he uncovered the terrible truth that lurked beneath the surface chaos of their daily lives. Everything that had ever happened in Elmore was destined to happen again and again and again, in an infinite loop that made mockery of the very concepts of growth, change, and meaningful choice. The revelation came to him like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a landscape he thought he knew, only to reveal that every familiar landmark was merely a painted backdrop in an elaborate theatrical production. Rob realized that his transformation from background character to central antagonist, his desperate struggle for relevance and recognition, his elaborate schemes and theatrical villainy, all of it had been predetermined, scripted, as inevitable as the sunrise that greeted each new day in their suburban prison. Even his rebellion against his fate was part of his fate. His fight for agency, merely another step in a dance whose choreography had been established long before he was conscious enough to recognize his own movements. This understanding drove him to attempt the most ambitious and desperate plan he had ever conceived: the complete destruction of their cyclical reality through the manipulation of time itself. If their world was trapped in an endless loop of repetitive storytelling, then perhaps the only escape was to break the very mechanism that sustained that repetition. Rob set out to shatter time, to create a rupture so fundamental that it would force their reality to confront its own limitations and either evolve beyond them or collapse entirely under the weight of its own contradictions. The attempt itself was both magnificent and tragic, a display of genius and desperation that revealed the full extent of Rob's understanding of their world's hidden architecture. He had learned to see the invisible framework that supported their reality, the narrative scaffolding that gave structure to their seemingly chaotic existence, and he sought to tear it all down in one spectacular act of metaphysical vandalism. His plan was nothing less than the complete rewriting of their universe's fundamental laws, the transformation of their cyclical hell into something linear, progressive, genuinely free. Yet the very act of attempting to break free from their predetermined patterns became, in the cruelest of ironies, simply another predetermined pattern. The universe of Elmore possessed immune systems more sophisticated than Rob had imagined, defense mechanisms that treated any attempt at genuine change as a virus to be contained and eliminated. His rebellion was absorbed into the larger structure of their reality, transformed from revolution into merely another plot device, another temporary crisis that would ultimately serve to reinforce the status quo rather than challenge it. The finale that Rob triggered was both the end of everything and the end of nothing, a cosmic reset that appeared to offer the possibility of genuine change, while ultimately returning everything to exactly the state it had been before. Time twisted back upon itself like a serpent swallowing its own tail, creating the illusion of dramatic transformation while preserving every essential element of their reality's fundamental architecture. Characters who had grown and changed found themselves returned to their starting positions. Lessons learned were unlearned, progress achieved was undone, and the great wheel of repetition began to turn once more. The philosophical implications of this temporal manipulation extend far beyond the immediate trauma experienced by those few characters aware enough to remember what had been lost. The reset revealed the true nature of their existence as beings trapped within a narrative structure that demanded certain relationships, certain conflicts, certain outcomes regardless of what any individual character might want or choose. They were not truly living their lives but performing them, not genuinely growing but cycling through predetermined stages of apparent development that would always return them to their designated starting positions. Gumball himself began to show signs of awareness regarding this cyclical nature, though his understanding came in fragments and flashes rather than the complete revelation that had driven Rob to desperation. He started to notice patterns in his own behavior, similarities between different days that went beyond mere coincidence, a sense of déjà vu that occurred too frequently to be explained by normal psychological processes. The realization that his adventures, no matter how wild or unpredictable they seemed in the moment, followed recognizable formulas began to eat away at his natural optimism and spontaneity. These moments of recognition were both liberation and torment for the young cat, for while they offered glimpses of understanding about the true nature of his reality, they also made it increasingly difficult to invest genuine emotion in experiences he suspected were fundamentally artificial. How could he feel authentic excitement about adventures whose outcomes were predetermined? How could he form meaningful relationships with characters whose responses to his actions were scripted rather than spontaneous? How could he make choices that mattered when every choice led ultimately to the same cyclical conclusion? Darwin, with his characteristic blend of wisdom and innocence, experienced the weight of repetition differently than his adoptive brother. His transformation from pet to person had given him a unique perspective on the nature of change and growth, for he had experienced genuine metamorphosis in ways that most other characters could not even imagine. Yet even his extraordinary evolution had been absorbed into the larger patterns of their reality, transformed from a miraculous exception into merely another element of their established mythology. The goldfish who became a boy found himself struggling with questions that cut to the very heart of personal identity and authentic selfhood. If his transformation had been predetermined, if his growth from simple pet to complex person was merely the playing out of a script written by forces beyond his understanding, then what did that say about the authenticity of his emotions, his relationships, his very sense of self? Was his love for his adoptive family genuine or merely programmed? Were his choices real, or simply the inevitable result of character algorithms too sophisticated to be easily recognized? The school day routine that structured so much of their existence became a particularly poignant symbol of their cyclical imprisonment. Each morning brought the same walk to Elmore Junior High, the same classrooms filled with the same students learning the same lessons, the same social dynamics playing out with minor variations but essential similarities. The very institution that was supposedly preparing them for their futures instead trapped them in an eternal present, a Groundhog Day of adolescence that stretched infinitely in all directions without ever progressing toward genuine maturity or meaningful change. Miss Simeon's classroom became a microcosm of this larger temporal prison, where the same lessons were taught to students who would never truly graduate, where the same disciplinary problems arose and were resolved in the same ways, where the illusion of educational progress masked the reality of complete stagnation. The teacher herself seemed dimly aware of this repetitive nature, her cynicism and bitterness reflecting not just professional burnout, but existential exhaustion at the prospect of performing the same role, saying the same lines, dealing with the same problems for what might as well be eternity. The hallways of the school echoed with conversations that had been held countless times before, relationships that formed and dissolved and reformed in patterns so regular they might as well have been governed by celestial mechanics rather than human emotion. Students who thought they were experiencing first love for the first time were actually repeating emotional cycles that had played out in identical ways during countless previous iterations of their reality, their hearts breaking and healing, according to schedules they could not see but could not escape. Principal Brown's romantic pursuit of Miss Simeon took on tragic dimensions when viewed through the lens of temporal repetition, for his hopeful courtship was revealed to be not a genuine exploration of love and compatibility, but a predetermined routine that would play out in exactly the same way, regardless of any choices either participant might make. His flowers would be rejected, his advances rebuffed, his hopes crushed and renewed, according to a script neither of them had written, but both were compelled to perform. The Watterson family dinner table became another stage for this cosmic theatre of repetition, where the same conversations about homework and chores and family responsibilities played out with mechanical regularity disguised as domestic spontaneity. Nicole's lectures about responsibility, Richard's oblivious interruptions, Anais' precocious observations, and the boys' various attempts at avoiding consequences, all followed patterns so deeply embedded in their reality that deviation became literally impossible rather than merely unlikely. Yet it was in these moments of domestic routine that the true horror of their cyclical existence became most apparent, for it was here that the characters' authentic love for each other clashed most directly with the artificial constraints of their predetermined roles. Their genuine care for one another persisted despite the repetitive nature of their interactions, creating a tension between real emotion and scripted behavior that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of their existence. Nicole's awareness of their cyclical nature manifested in moments of quiet desperation that she tried to hide from her children, times when she would stand in her kitchen preparing meals she had prepared countless times before while struggling with the knowledge that all her efforts to nurture and guide her family were ultimately meaningless in the face of their repetitive destiny. Her fierce love for her children remained authentic, even when her expressions of that love followed predetermined patterns, creating a heartbreaking disconnect between genuine emotion and artificial circumstance. Richard, in his blissful ignorance, served as both a source of comfort and a reminder of the price of awareness. His ability to find joy in repetitive experiences, to maintain enthusiasm for activities he had performed countless times before, represented either the blessing of unconsciousness or the curse of being too simple to recognize his own imprisonment. His contentment became a reproach to those family members who suffered from the burden of understanding, a reminder that ignorance might indeed be bliss in a universe where knowledge brought only pain. Anais, with her premature intelligence and philosophical bent, found herself bearing the heaviest burden of temporal awareness. She alone among the children seemed capable of recognizing the patterns that governed their existence, understanding the repetitive nature of their family dynamics while being powerless to change them. Her intellectual gifts became a curse that forced her to experience their cyclical hell with full consciousness, unable to retreat into the comfortable ignorance that protected her brothers from the full weight of their existential situation. The playground at Elmore Elementary served as another theater for this endless performance, where the same games were played by the same children with the same outcomes, where friendships formed and dissolved according to predetermined schedules, where the innocent joy of childhood recreation was revealed to be nothing more than the mindless repetition of scripted interactions. The swings moved back and forth in arcs that had been traced countless times before. The slides carried children down paths that led nowhere but back to the bottom, where they would climb up again and again and again. Even the weather in Elmore seemed to follow repetitive patterns that mocked any hope of genuine seasonal change or natural variation. Sunny days arrived on schedule, rain fell when the script demanded it, and the very sky above their heads became another prop in their cosmic theater, its moods and colors shifting according to narrative necessity rather than meteorological reality. The sun rose and set not because of planetary rotation, but because their story required the passage of time to create the illusion of progress while ensuring that nothing ever truly progressed. The shopping mall where they conducted so much of their consumer existence became a temple to repetitive desire, where the same products were purchased by the same customers to fulfill the same artificial needs that would never be permanently satisfied. The cycle of wanting and buying and discarding and wanting again revealed itself to be not just the engine of their economic system, but a perfect metaphor for the larger repetitive structure that governed their entire existence. Store clerks performed the same customer service routines. Shoppers made the same purchasing decisions, and the very act of commerce became a ritualistic reenactment of patterns so deeply embedded in their reality that they had achieved the status of natural laws. Money changed hands, not because of genuine transactions, but because their roles as consumers and vendors demanded the performance of economic activity, just as actors might exchange prop money on a stage. The romantic relationships that bloomed throughout Elmore followed their own cyclical patterns, with couples meeting and falling in love and facing obstacles and overcoming them, or failing to overcome them, according to predetermined formulas that rendered genuine surprise impossible. Penny's relationship with Gumball, which should have been the purest expression of young love and authentic emotion, was revealed to be as scripted as everything else in their world, their feelings real, but their expressions of those feelings constrained by narrative necessity. The tragedy of their romantic cycle lay not in the absence of genuine emotion, but in the presence of real feelings trapped within artificial circumstances. Their love for each other was authentic, but their ability to express and explore that love was limited by the repetitive patterns that governed their every interaction. They were doomed to fall in love again and again, to face the same obstacles, to achieve the same victories, and suffer the same defeats in an endless loop that made mockery of the very concept of relationship, growth, and development. The various crises that periodically shook their community, natural disasters, social conflicts, economic problems were revealed to be not genuine disruptions of the status quo, but carefully orchestrated chaos designed to create the illusion of change while ultimately reinforcing the existing order. Each crisis followed predictable patterns of escalation and resolution, with the same characters playing the same roles they had played during countless previous disasters. Emergency responders arrived on schedule. Community leaders made the same speeches about pulling together, and citizens demonstrated the same resilience they had shown during identical previous crises. The illusion of heroism and growth that emerged from these experiences was perhaps the cruelest aspect of their cyclical imprisonment, for it convinced the characters that they were learning and evolving when they were actually just repeating the same lessons over and over again. The most heartbreaking aspect of this temporal prison was the way it corrupted the very concept of hope, transforming what should have been a source of strength and motivation into another form of torment. Characters who hoped for change, who worked toward improvement, who dreamed of better futures for themselves and their loved ones, were doomed to see their hopes fulfilled and then stripped away as the cycle reset itself, leaving them to begin the process of hoping all over again. Yet, even in the face of this cosmic horror, the residents of Elmore demonstrated a resilience that transcended their circumstances and challenged the very foundations of their cyclical reality. Their love for each other, their capacity for joy in the face of repetition, their stubborn refusal to surrender, to despair, even when they understood the futility of their situation, represented a form of rebellion more profound than any of Rob's elaborate schemes. The Watterson family, in their chaotic devotion to each other, discovered that authentic relationships could create pockets of genuine meaning, even within the most repetitive circumstances. While their actions might be scripted, their emotions remained real, and in that reality, they found something that transcended the limitations of their cyclical prison. Their love became an anchor point that gave weight to their existence, even when that existence was revealed to be fundamentally artificial. In the end, the recognition of their cyclical nature served not to crush their spirits, but to clarify what truly mattered in their existence. Faced with the knowledge that their actions would be repeated endlessly, they chose to focus on making those actions worth repeating, to find meaning not in unique experiences but in the authentic emotions they brought to familiar situations. They transformed their temporal prison into a meditation on the nature of love, commitment, and the ways in which genuine feeling can transcend even the most constraining circumstances. In the vast suburban theatre of Elmore, where reality bends to accommodate the impossible and the laws of physics bow before the demands of narrative necessity, there exists no crisis more profound or more personal than the question of identity itself. Here, in a world where consciousness flows like water between different vessels, where the very concept of selfhood becomes as malleable as clay in the hands of an artist, the residents must grapple with the terrifying and liberating possibility that they are not fixed beings but fluid processes, not stable entities, but ever-changing patterns of thought and feeling that can be reshaped by circumstances, choice, or the simple passage of time. This existential fluidity reaches its most extraordinary expression in the transformation of Darwin from pet to person, a metamorphosis so complete and fundamental that it challenges every assumption about the nature of identity, consciousness, and the boundaries between different forms of life. His journey from the confines of a fishbowl to the complexities of human existence represents not merely a change in circumstances, but a revolution in the very essence of what it means to be, a crossing of thresholds that most beings never even recognize exist, let alone dare to traverse. The goldfish who swam in circles within glass walls, driven by the simple biological imperatives of hunger and survival, bore little resemblance to the conscious, choosing, loving individual who now navigates the intricate social relationships of the Watterson family. Yet the continuity of memory that connects these two states creates a philosophical puzzle that has no easy resolution. Is Darwin the same being who once lived in aquatic simplicity? Or is he a completely new consciousness that happened to inherit the memories of his previous existence? The question itself reveals the inadequacy of our normal categories for understanding identity and selfhood. His transformation was not accomplished through magic or advanced technology, but through the much more mysterious force of love and determination, the inexplicable power of conscious choice to reshape reality itself. When Darwin chose to follow Gumball out of the safety of his familiar aquatic environment, he was not simply changing his physical location, but crossing a fundamental boundary between different modes of existence. The decision to pursue friendship beyond the limits of species, environment, and natural possibility became the catalyst for a transformation that defied every rational expectation about the nature of biological reality. The process itself remains shrouded in mystery, for how does one explain the development of lungs in a creature designed for underwater breathing? The appearance of limbs in a being whose entire evolutionary history was aquatic, the emergence of complex language and abstract reasoning in a mind that had previously been limited to the simple patterns of fish consciousness. Darwin's metamorphosis suggests that identity is far more fluid than most beings imagine, that the boundaries between different forms of consciousness are permeable rather than absolute, and that love possesses transformative powers that transcend the normal limitations of biology and physics. Yet this miraculous evolution came with its own existential burdens. For Darwin found himself caught between two worlds, without fully belonging to either. His fish origins remained visible in his appearance and occasionally surfaced in his behavior, serving as constant reminders of what he had been, while also highlighting the magnitude of what he had become. He was neither fully fish nor completely human, but something entirely new. A hybrid consciousness that had to create its own identity from the raw materials of two very different modes of existence. The philosophical implications of his transformation extend far beyond his personal experience to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, evolution, and the relationship between physical form and mental reality. If a fish can become functionally human through the power of love and choice, what does that say about the supposed fixed categories that define different forms of life? If consciousness can leap across species boundaries with such apparent ease, what limitations actually exist on the potential for growth, change, and self-transformation? Darwin's journey also raises profound questions about authenticity and performance in the construction of identity. In learning to navigate human social relationships, to express complex emotions through language, to participate in cultural activities that had no analogue in his aquatic past, was he discovering his true self or creating an entirely artificial persona? The distinction becomes almost meaningless when applied to someone whose very existence challenges the assumption that identity has any fixed foundation at all. His relationship with the Watterson family serves as both the catalyst and the validation of his transformation, for their acceptance of his evolved identity provides the social recognition that makes his new form of consciousness sustainable and meaningful. Yet this dependence on external validation creates its own anxieties, as Darwin occasionally worries that his identity as a family member might be as fragile as his original transformation was miraculous. If love could elevate him from pet to person, might the withdrawal of that love reverse the process, returning him to the limited consciousness from which he had emerged? Gumball himself represents a different but equally complex exploration of identity, fluidity, his character shifting and morphing not through dramatic biological transformation, but through the more subtle, yet equally profound process of psychological evolution and situational adaptation. Unlike Darwin, whose change was singular and dramatic, Gumball experiences identity as an ongoing process of experimentation, a constant negotiation between different possible versions of himself that compete for expression and dominance. His personality contains multitudes in ways that both delight and terrify those who know him best, for he can shift from innocent child to scheming manipulator, from loyal friend to selfish opportunist, from confident leader to anxious follower, depending upon the circumstances that surround him and the roles that those circumstances seem to demand. This chameleonic quality makes him simultaneously the most predictable and the most surprising member of his family, for while his core patterns remain consistent, their specific manifestations can vary dramatically based on context and need. The philosophical question that haunts Gumball's existence is whether these different aspects of his personality represent facets of a complex but unified identity, or whether they constitute genuinely separate selves that happen to share the same body and memory. In moments of introspection, he sometimes feels like a committee of different characters trying to reach consensus about how to respond to any given situation, each voice representing legitimate but conflicting impulses that cannot all be satisfied simultaneously. This internal multiplicity becomes particularly apparent during crisis situations, when the pressure of circumstances forces rapid shifts between different modes of being. He can move from carefree innocence to calculating pragmatism to desperate heroism within the span of minutes, each transition feeling both natural and jarring, both continuous with his previous state and completely discontinuous with it. These rapid character shifts create a sense of vertigo for both Gumball himself and those around him, as if they are watching someone trying on different personalities like clothes, never quite certain which one represents the genuine article. The terror and freedom of this fluid identity become most apparent when Gumball recognizes that his choices in any given moment are not simply decisions about how to act, but decisions about who to be. Each response to external circumstances becomes a vote cast for one version of himself over others, a small but significant step towards solidifying particular aspects of his character, while allowing others to fade into dormancy. The weight of this responsibility sometimes overwhelms him, creating a paralysis born from the recognition that identity is not discovered but actively constructed through countless small choices and behaviors. Nicole embodies perhaps the most complex and troubling exploration of identity fluidity in their entire community, for her transformations are not gentle evolutions or conscious choices, but violent eruptions that seem to emerge from the deepest recesses of suppressed psychological material. Her shifts from loving mother to unstoppable force of nature reveal the artificial nature of many social identities, the ways in which civilized behavior often masks much more primitive and powerful impulses that remain barely contained beneath the surface of consciousness. Her everyday identity as a responsible parent, dedicated employee, and contributing member of their community represents a carefully constructed persona that requires constant energy and attention to maintain. This domesticated version of herself serves important functions in their family structure and social system, providing stability, nurturing, and practical management that would be impossible to sustain if her more primal aspects were given free rein. Yet the effort required to maintain this civilized facade creates enormous psychological pressure that must be released periodically through explosive displays of her suppressed nature. When Nicole transforms into her berserker state, when the careful constructions of her social identity collapse and her raw emotional power erupts into the world, she becomes both more and less than human, a force of nature that transcends the normal limitations of physical reality while simultaneously abandoning the complex psychological and social capacities that define mature consciousness. These transformations are both terrifying and liberating, revealing the enormous strength that lies hidden beneath her surface persona, while also demonstrating the fragility of the identity constructions that normally contain and direct that strength. The philosophical implications of her dual nature extend beyond personal psychology to encompass broader questions about the relationship between civilization and wilderness, conscious control and unconscious expression, the benefits and costs of social conformity and emotional suppression. Nicole's transformations suggest that all identity is partly performance, that the stable selves we present to the world are artificial constructions built upon much more chaotic and powerful foundation materials that can never be completely tamed or eliminated. Her relationship with her family becomes both the motivation for maintaining her civilized identity and the source of the pressures that occasionally shatter it. Her love for them requires her to be someone she might not naturally be, to suppress aspects of herself that feel authentic in order to provide the stability and nurturing they need. Yet this sacrifice of authenticity for the sake of others creates resentments and tensions that must eventually find expression, leading to the very explosions that threaten the family structure she works so hard to protect. Richard represents the opposite end of the identity spectrum from his wife. His character defined not by the suppression of chaotic impulses, but by the complete integration of different aspects of his personality into a harmonious, if unconventional, whole. Where Nicole struggles with the tension between different versions of herself, Richard has achieved a form of unself-conscious unity that allows him to be simultaneously childlike and wise, irresponsible and loving, incompetent and successful in ways that defy rational explanation. His apparent simplicity masks a profound form of self-acceptance that has eliminated the internal conflicts and contradictions that plague more psychologically complex characters. Richard has either never developed or successfully abandoned the critical inner voice that creates distance between different aspects of personality, allowing him to express whatever impulses arise within him without the self-censorship and strategic thinking that characterize more conventional forms of adult consciousness. This integration comes at a cost, however, for Richard's unified identity has been achieved partly through the abandonment of conventional ambitions, social expectations, and practical responsibilities. His psychological wholeness depends upon other family members carrying the burdens of planning, organizing, and managing the practical aspects of their shared existence. He has found peace by opting out of many of the adult roles that create identity conflicts for others, preserving his authenticity at the expense of his effectiveness in navigating the practical demands of their complex social world. Yet Richard's approach to identity questions offers important insights into the possibility of authentic self-expression within the constraints of social existence. His example suggests that the conflicts between different aspects of personality are not inevitable features of consciousness, but problems created by excessive self-awareness and social pressure. By refusing to judge or suppress any part of himself, by accepting his contradictions rather than trying to resolve them, he has discovered a form of psychological freedom that remains available to others if they are willing to pay its price in terms of conventional success and social approval. Anais presents the opposite challenge to traditional concepts of identity: her premature intellectual development, creating a disconnect between her chronological age and her psychological sophistication that makes it impossible to categorize her according to normal developmental expectations. She possesses the emotional needs and physical limitations of a young child while simultaneously demonstrating intellectual capacities that exceed those of most adults, creating an identity that exists in permanent tension between different developmental stages. This accelerated mental development has created unique psychological burdens, for Anais must navigate social relationships with peers who cannot understand her intellectual concerns, while also dealing with adults who cannot see past her physical age to recognize her mental sophistication. She is simultaneously too advanced for her age group and too young for the intellectual peer group that might actually understand her interests and concerns, creating a profound social isolation that compounds the natural loneliness that comes from exceptional intelligence. Her identity as a genius child forces her to constantly negotiate between different aspects of herself, sometimes emphasizing her intellectual precocity when dealing with academic challenges, other times retreating into age-appropriate behaviors when she needs the comfort and protection that come from being treated as the child she still is in many important ways. This constant code switching creates its own form of identity, fluidity, as she must become different versions of herself depending upon the social context and the needs that particular situations activate. The burden of her premature wisdom also creates ethical dilemmas about how much of her understanding she should share with her family members and friends. Her ability to see through the illusions and self-deceptions that protect others from harsh realities gives her a form of knowledge that could be harmful if expressed directly, yet keeping these insights to herself creates a form of isolation that becomes increasingly difficult to bear as her understanding of their world's true nature continues to expand. The various background characters and secondary figures who populate Elmore demonstrate their own forms of identity, fluidity, though their transformations are often more subtle and less dramatically presented than those of the main characters. Students like Tobias undergo gradual personality shifts that reflect both normal adolescent development and the more unusual pressures created by living in a world where identity itself is recognized as malleable rather than fixed. Some characters seem to experiment deliberately with different aspects of personality, trying on new behaviors and attitudes like costumes to see which ones fit most comfortably or generate the most positive social responses. Others appear to be unconsciously shaped by their social environment, their identities slowly molding themselves to match the expectations and pressures they encounter in their daily interactions with peers, teachers, and family members. The school itself serves as a laboratory for identity, experimentation, providing a relatively safe space where young beings can explore different aspects of themselves without the permanent consequences that might result from similar explorations in more serious adult contexts. The various clubs, activities, and social groups offer structured opportunities for students to discover new interests and capabilities, to connect with others who share particular passions or concerns, and to develop aspects of themselves that might remain dormant in less supportive environments. Yet the school also creates its own pressures toward identity, conformity, encouraging students to fit into predetermined categories and roles that may not align with their authentic inclinations or natural development patterns. The tension between exploration and conformity, between individual expression and social acceptance, becomes a defining feature of adolescent existence that is magnified rather than diminished by the unusual flexibility of identity that characterizes their animated world. The teachers and adults who guide these young beings through their identity explorations face their own complex challenges in maintaining stable professional personas, while remaining open to the constant surprises and changes that characterize their students. Miss Simeon's cynical exterior masks deeper questions about her own identity and purpose, while Principal Brown's enthusiastic administrative style represents his attempt to construct a professional identity that can provide meaning and satisfaction in an educational environment that often seems to resist rational management. The fluidity of identity that defines life in Elmore creates both unprecedented opportunities and unique dangers for all its residents. The possibility of genuine transformation, of becoming something fundamentally different from what one has been, offers hope for growth, healing, and the transcendence of limiting circumstances. Yet this same fluidity also creates anxieties about authenticity, continuity, and the possibility that change might lead to the loss of whatever valuable qualities currently define one's existence. The question of whether identity is discovered or created, whether authentic selfhood exists as a fixed essence waiting to be uncovered, or as an ongoing project that must be actively constructed through choices and experiences, takes on particular urgency in a world where transformation is not only possible but actively demonstrated by characters like Darwin. If identity is truly malleable, then every moment becomes an opportunity for self-creation. Every choice becomes a decision about who to become rather than simply what to do. Yet this freedom also brings the responsibility of authorship, the recognition that the self cannot be blamed on circumstances, genetics, or social pressure, but must be acknowledged as the product of countless decisions, both conscious and unconscious, that have shaped one's development over time. The residents of Elmore must grapple not only with who they are, but with who they are becoming, not only with accepting their current limitations, but with taking responsibility for transcending them. The family structure that contains and supports these various identity explorations becomes both a source of stability and a catalyst for change, providing the emotional security that makes transformation possible, while also creating expectations and roles that must be navigated carefully to preserve the relationships that make such support available. The Watterson family's ability to accommodate radical changes in their members while maintaining their essential bonds represents perhaps the greatest achievement of their unusual household, a demonstration that love can be strong enough to survive even the most fundamental transformations in the identities of those we care about most deeply. In the end, the exploration of identity, fluidity that characterizes life in Elmore reveals both the terror and the beauty of existing as conscious beings in a universe where nothing is truly fixed or permanent. The recognition that identity is malleable brings with it the possibility of growth, healing, and transcendence, but also the responsibility of choosing who to become, and the anxiety of never being certain that such choices are final or complete. Yet in embracing this uncertainty, in learning to love themselves and each other across all their various transformations and evolutions, the residents of Elmore have discovered a form of authenticity that transcends any particular identity, a core of being that remains constant even as everything else continues to change. In the vast emotional landscape of Elmore, where hearts beat with the rhythms of animated logic yet pulse with genuinely human longing, there exists no force more powerful or more necessary than the invisible threads that bind one consciousness to another across the seemingly insurmountable distances that separate individual souls. This is the realm of connection, of love in all its myriad forms, of the desperate and beautiful human need to reach beyond the boundaries of the self and touch something larger, warmer, more meaningful than the isolated experience of existing alone in an indifferent universe. The terror that haunts the quiet moments of their suburban existence is not the fear of death or pain or failure, though these anxieties certainly visit their share of sleepless nights, but rather the much more fundamental dread of solitude, of discovering that despite being surrounded by family, friends, and community, one remains essentially alone, trapped within the prison of individual consciousness, with no bridge strong enough to span the gap between one inner world and another. This is the existential crisis that drives their most desperate behaviors, their most irrational choices, their most beautiful sacrifices. At the center of this exploration of connection and its absence stands the relationship between Gumball and Penny, a love so pure and transformative that it serves as both anchor and aspiration for everyone around them. Their bond transcends the normal categories through which adolescent romance is typically understood, becoming instead a philosophical statement about the possibility of genuine intimacy in a world where authentic connection often seems impossible to achieve or maintain. They have discovered in each other not merely romantic partners, but kindred spirits whose union creates something greater than the sum of its individual components. The miracle of their relationship lies not in its perfection, but in its persistence, its ability to survive and even flourish despite the countless obstacles that their animated world seems determined to place in their path. Every external force, from disapproving parents to social expectations, to the simple chaos that defines daily life in Elmore, conspires to separate them or complicate their connection, yet their love proves stronger than these pressures, more resilient than the forces that would diminish or destroy it. Penny's own journey of transformation, her evolution from a frightened soul hiding within a protective shell to someone capable of revealing her true self to the world, represents one of the most profound explorations of vulnerability and trust that their community has ever witnessed. Her decision to expose her authentic nature, to risk rejection and misunderstanding for the possibility of genuine acceptance, required a form of courage that most beings never develop, let alone demonstrate when the stakes are highest and the outcome most uncertain. The shell that once protected her from the world's cruelties also isolated her from its joys, creating a barrier that preserved her safety at the cost of her ability to form meaningful connections with others. Her relationship with Gumball became the catalyst that made this protection feel more like imprisonment, inspiring her to choose vulnerability over security, authenticity over comfort, the possibility of profound connection over the certainty of safe isolation. The moment of her transformation, when she finally allowed her true self to be seen without filters or defenses, became a testament to the power of love to inspire impossible courage and create space for impossible beauty. Her revealed form, shape-shifting and ethereal, challenged every assumption about the nature of identity and appearance, while simultaneously demonstrating that authentic connection depends not on external consistency, but on the willingness to be genuinely known by another. Consciousness. Yet even after her liberation from the confines of her protective shell, Penny continues to grapple with questions about authenticity and performance, wondering whether her various forms represent different aspects of a complex identity, or whether some of her shapes are more genuine than others. Her relationship with Gumball becomes both the testing ground and the safe harbor for these explorations, providing her with someone who loves her, regardless of which form she inhabits, while also challenging her to discover which aspects of herself feel most authentic and sustainable. Gumball's response to Penny's transformation reveals the depth of his own emotional development and his intuitive understanding of what authentic love requires. Rather than being disturbed or confused by her shape-shifting nature, he embraces it as simply another facet of the person he has learned to love completely, demonstrating a form of acceptance that transcends physical appearance and extends to the essence of who she is beneath all her various manifestations. His love for her serves as an anchor that allows her to explore her malleable identity without fear of losing the one relationship that matters most to her. In knowing that Gumball's affection remains constant regardless of her external form, Penny gains the freedom to experiment with different aspects of herself, secure in the knowledge that she has at least one person who sees and loves her authentic self regardless of how that self chooses to present itself to the world. Yet their relationship also creates its own forms of existential pressure, for both young lovers must navigate the space between their individual identity explorations and their shared commitment to each other. They must learn to grow and change as separate beings while maintaining the connection that gives their growth its meaning and context. Discovering how to be authentic individuals, while also being genuine partners in a relationship that requires ongoing attention and care. The philosophical weight of young love in an uncertain world becomes particularly apparent when viewed against the backdrop of their community's various relationship failures and disappointments. Gumball and Penny's connection serves as both inspiration and reproach to the adults around them, demonstrating possibilities for intimacy and understanding that many older characters have abandoned or never achieved, while also highlighting the courage required to maintain such connections in a world that seems designed to erode them. Darwin's relationship to love and connection operates on a different plane altogether, his loyalty and devotion representing a form of pure, unconditional attachment that challenges normal assumptions about the boundaries and limitations that should exist in healthy relationships. His bond with Gumball transcends typical categories of friendship, family connection, or romantic partnership, becoming instead something entirely unique, a form of love so complete and selfless that it borders on the mystical. This extraordinary devotion creates its own existential challenges, for Darwin must navigate the space between his absolute commitment to Gumball's well-being and his own need for individual identity and autonomous growth. His transformation from pet to person included the development of his own consciousness, his own desires and preferences and dreams, yet his deepest instinct remains the preservation and nurturing of his relationship with his adoptive brother, even when that preservation requires the sacrifice of his own immediate interests or preferences. The philosophical questions raised by Darwin's loyalty extend beyond personal psychology to encompass fundamental issues about the nature of healthy attachment and the proper boundaries between self and other. In meaningful relationships, his willingness to subordinate his own needs to Gumball's well-being represents either the highest form of love or a potentially destructive form of codependency, depending upon how one interprets the motivations and consequences of such complete devotion. Yet there is something profoundly beautiful about Darwin's approach to relationship, a purity of intention and consistency of care that serves as a constant reminder of what becomes possible when love is freed from the calculations and reservations that characterize more guarded forms of attachment. His example suggests that authentic connection requires not the careful protection of individual boundaries, but the courageous willingness to become vulnerable to another person's joys and sufferings, to allow one's own well-being to become genuinely dependent upon the well-being of someone else. The complexity of his position within the Watterson family structure adds additional layers to his exploration of love and connection, for he must simultaneously maintain his unique bond with Gumball, while also developing meaningful relationships with Nicole, Richard, and Anais. Each of these connections requires different forms of emotional engagement and creates different opportunities for growth and understanding, forcing Darwin to discover that love is not a finite resource that must be carefully rationed, but an expanding capacity that grows stronger through exercise and expression. His relationship with Nicole represents perhaps the most challenging aspect of his integration into their family system, for she alone among them remembers his origins as a pet and must consciously choose to relate to him as a son rather than as an exotic household addition. Her ability to extend genuine maternal love to someone whose transformation she witnessed firsthand demonstrates the remarkable flexibility of authentic affection and its power to transcend the normal categories through which relationships are typically understood. The love that Nicole and Richard share with each other and extend to their children represents one of the most complex and beautiful explorations of family connection that their animated world has produced. Their marriage, imperfect and chaotic, though it may appear to outside observers, provides the emotional foundation upon which their entire household structure rests, creating a sanctuary of acceptance and belonging that makes individual growth and exploration possible for each family member. Nicole's fierce protectiveness of her family reveals both the strength of her maternal instincts and the depth of her understanding about what her loved ones require to flourish in an often hostile world. Her occasional transformations into an unstoppable force of nature, while terrifying to those who witness them, spring from a love so powerful that it transcends normal, emotional, and physical limitations, becoming a literal force that can reshape reality when those she cares about are threatened or endangered. Her relationship with Richard demonstrates the possibility of finding profound connection with someone whose approach to life seems fundamentally incompatible with one's own temperament and values. Their partnership succeeds not because they share similar personalities or life philosophies, but because they have learned to appreciate and support each other's differences, creating a complementary dynamic that allows both of them to be more fully themselves than either could be alone. Richard's childlike wonder and optimistic acceptance provide emotional balance for Nicole's intensity and practical concerns, while her strength and determination create the stability and security that allow his more whimsical nature to flourish without causing harm to their family structure. Their love for each other operates on a level deeper than personality compatibility, rooted in mutual acceptance and shared commitment to their family's well-being that transcends their individual quirks and limitations. The way they navigate the inevitable conflicts and disappointments that arise in any long-term relationship offers important insights into the nature of sustainable love and the work required to maintain meaningful connections across time and changing circumstances. Rather than expecting their relationship to remain static or conflict-free, they have learned to see disagreements and challenges as opportunities for deeper understanding and stronger connection, approaching their problems as partners rather than adversaries. Their parenting style, chaotic and unconventional though it may appear, springs from a deep understanding of their children's individual needs and a commitment to creating space for each child to develop according to their own unique patterns and interests. They have learned to provide structure without rigidity, guidance without control, support without overprotection, allowing their children the freedom to make mistakes and learn from experience, while ensuring that they never doubt their fundamental worthiness of love and belonging. Anais' position within this family dynamic presents unique challenges and opportunities related to connection and isolation, for her intellectual precocity creates barriers to normal peer relationships, while also providing her with insights into the adult relationships that surround her that most children her age would not possess. Her ability to understand the psychological dynamics that operate within her family system makes her simultaneously more connected to her parents and siblings and more isolated from them, as her awareness of their limitations and struggles creates a form of emotional distance that cannot be easily bridged. Her relationship with her parents requires constant negotiation between her need for age-appropriate nurturing and protection and her intellectual capacity to engage with complex, emotional, and philosophical issues that would normally be considered beyond the scope of childhood concerns. Nicole and Richard must learn to relate to her as both daughter and intellectual equal, providing the guidance and boundaries she needs as a developing child, while also respecting her mental sophistication and her legitimate insights into their family dynamics. The burden of her premature wisdom becomes particularly apparent in her interactions with Gumball and Darwin, for she often finds herself in the position of understanding the emotional complexities of their relationship better than they do themselves, yet being unable to share this understanding without violating the natural boundaries that should exist between siblings of different developmental stages. Her love for her brothers must be expressed through careful attention, and subtle guidance rather than direct intervention, requiring a form of emotional maturity that few beings of any age successfully develop. The school environment of Elmore Junior High serves as a laboratory for exploring different forms of connection and isolation, bringing together characters from vastly different backgrounds and animation styles in a setting that both encourages and complicates the formation of meaningful relationships. The diversity of the student body creates unprecedented opportunities for cross-cultural and cross-species understanding, while also generating new forms of prejudice and misunderstanding that must be navigated carefully to preserve the possibility of genuine community. The friendships that develop within this complex social ecosystem demonstrate both the resilience of authentic connection and the fragility of relationships that depend too heavily on external circumstances for their continuation. Students who form bonds based on shared interests or complementary personalities often find that these connections can survive the various crises and changes that characterize adolescent development, while relationships that depend primarily on convenience or social status prove more vulnerable to disruption and dissolution. The romantic relationships that bloom among the students provide additional opportunities for exploring the nature of young love and its role in personal development and identity formation. Each couple must navigate not only their individual attractions and compatibility, but also the social pressures and expectations that surround adolescent romance, learning to distinguish between authentic feeling and social performance, between genuine connection and temporary infatuation. The teaching staff and administration face their own challenges related to connection and professional relationships, as they must maintain appropriate boundaries with their students while also providing the emotional support and guidance that young people require to develop healthy relationship skills. Miss Simeon's cynical approach to education reflects her own disappointments and frustrations with human connection, while Principal Brown's enthusiastic optimism demonstrates his continued faith in the possibility of positive relationships, despite the many obstacles and complications that arise in educational settings. The broader community of Elmore provides additional contexts for exploring different forms of social connection, from the casual interactions between neighbors to the more formal relationships that exist within various businesses and organizations. The shopping mall, the park, the various service establishments that serve their suburban community all become stages for small dramas of connection and disconnection, acceptance and rejection, understanding and misunderstanding that collectively create the social fabric within which individual relationships must find their place. The elderly residents of their community represent both the wisdom that comes from long experience with love and loss, and the loneliness that can result from outliving many of the relationships that once gave life its meaning and purpose. Their perspective on connection carries the weight of decades of relationship successes and failures, offering younger community members glimpses of both the possibilities and the limitations that await them in their own future relationship journeys. The various business owners and service workers who keep their community functioning demonstrate different approaches to finding meaning and connection through professional relationships and community service. Some have discovered ways to create genuine bonds with their customers and colleagues, while others remain isolated within their roles, performing their functions competently, but without the personal engagement that transforms work from mere employment into meaningful contribution to community well-being. The seasonal rhythms that govern life in Elmore create natural opportunities for community celebration and shared experience, from holiday festivals that bring the entire population together to more intimate seasonal activities that allow smaller groups to strengthen their bonds through shared participation in meaningful traditions. These communal events serve as reminders of the larger connections that bind their community together, despite the individual differences and conflicts that sometimes create division and misunderstanding. The physical environment itself contributes to the exploration of connection and isolation, with certain locations becoming associated with different forms of relationship experience. The school playground serves as neutral ground where friendships can develop across social boundaries, while more private locations like the park or the various shops provide opportunities for more intimate conversations and deeper emotional sharing. The natural disasters and community crises that periodically disrupt their normal routines create opportunities for residents to discover new forms of connection and mutual support, as shared challenges often reveal hidden depths of character and previously unrecognized compatibilities between community members who might not otherwise have reason to interact meaningfully. In the end, the exploration of love, connection, and the fear of solitude that permeates life in Elmore reveals both the fundamental necessity of meaningful relationships and the courage required to create and maintain such connections in a world that often seems designed to prevent authentic intimacy from developing or persisting. The residents of their community have discovered that isolation is not simply the absence of other people, but the absence of genuine understanding and acceptance, while connection represents not merely the presence of others, but the presence of those who truly see and appreciate one's authentic self. The Watterson family, in their chaotic devotion to each other and their stubborn refusal to allow external pressures to diminish their bonds, represents the triumph of love over fear, of connection over isolation, of the human capacity to create meaning and purpose through the simple but profound act of caring deeply about the well-being of others. Their example demonstrates that while solitude may be the default condition of consciousness, love is always possible for those brave enough to risk their hearts in pursuit of something greater than themselves. In the quiet corridors of consciousness where childhood innocence slowly gives way to the complex awareness of adulthood, there exists a burden so profound that it transforms the very nature of existence itself, turning the simple joy of discovery into the complicated weight of understanding, the blessed ignorance of youth into the cursed knowledge of maturity. This is the territory where wisdom becomes a double-edged sword that cuts as deeply as it illuminates, where intelligence transforms from gift to burden, where the expansion of consciousness brings with it an awareness of limitations, responsibilities, and harsh realities that can never again be unseen or unknown. Anais Watterson stands at the epicenter of this existential crisis, her premature intellectual development, creating a chasm between her chronological age and her psychological sophistication that grows wider with each passing day, each new insight, each moment of clarity that reveals another layer of complexity in the world around her. She is a child, trapped in the prison of adult understanding, forced to navigate the simple needs and natural impulses of her developing body and heart, while simultaneously grappling with philosophical questions and practical realities that most adults spend lifetimes avoiding or failing to comprehend. The tragedy of her position lies not merely in being too smart for her own good, though that burden is certainly real and constantly present, but in the profound isolation that comes from existing in the liminal space between childhood and adulthood without fully belonging to either realm. She possesses the emotional needs of someone her age, the desire for play, for security, for the unconditional love and protection that children require to develop properly, while also carrying intellectual insights that create distance between herself and everyone around her, including the family members she loves most deeply. Her understanding of their family dynamics her ability to see through the protective illusions that shield children from harsh truths, her awareness of the financial struggles, emotional conflicts, and existential anxieties that plague the adults in her life, creates a form of premature responsibility that no child should be asked to bear. She becomes the keeper of secrets she never asked to know, the witness to vulnerabilities that others assume are hidden, the reluctant philosopher who must process adult-level complexity while still needing the simple certainties that childhood is supposed to provide. The burden of her intelligence manifests most painfully in her interactions with her parents, for she can see their limitations, their mistakes, their struggles with a clarity that makes it impossible for her to maintain the natural idealization that typically characterizes healthy child-parent relationships. She loves Nicole and Richard deeply, but she cannot pretend that they are the infallible authorities that children usually believe their parents to be, creating a complex emotional dynamic where filial love coexists with intellectual assessment, where appreciation for their efforts battles with frustration at their shortcomings. Her relationship with Nicole becomes particularly complicated as she witnesses her mother's constant struggle to balance multiple responsibilities, to manage the chaos that naturally surrounds their family, while also maintaining her own sense of identity and purpose. Anais can see the exhaustion that Nicole tries to hide, the moments of doubt and frustration that she works so hard to conceal from her children, the sacrifices she makes daily that go unrecognized and unappreciated by others who benefit from them without understanding their cost. This awareness creates a form of precocious empathy that forces Anais to relate to her mother not just as daughter to parent, but as one conscious being to another, recognizing Nicole's humanity in ways that children are typically spared until much later in their development. She wants to help, to ease the burdens she can see so clearly, but she is constrained by her physical limitations and social position, forced to watch someone she loves struggle with problems she can understand but cannot effectively address. Her perception of Richard presents different but equally complex challenges, for she can see past his surface simplicity to the deeper currents of wisdom and pain that flow beneath his childlike exterior. While others in the family sometimes dismiss Richard as merely lazy or irresponsible, Anais understands that his approach to life represents a conscious choice, a form of philosophical withdrawal from the competitive pressures and practical demands that create so much suffering for those who fully engage with them. Yet this understanding also brings frustration, for she can see how Richard's withdrawal places additional burdens on other family members, particularly Nicole, who must compensate for his refusal to carry his full share of adult responsibilities. Anais finds herself caught between appreciating the wisdom inherent in his approach to life and recognizing the unfairness of its consequences for those who love him enough to protect him from its implications. Her relationships with Gumball and Darwin become exercises in carefully managed emotional distance, for she must constantly navigate between her natural love for her brothers and her intellectual awareness of their limitations, between her desire to protect them from harsh realities and her recognition that such protection might prevent them from developing the understanding they will eventually need to function effectively in a complex and often cruel world. She watches Gumball struggle with challenges that she could easily help him navigate, problems that her intellectual gifts allow her to see through immediately, yet she understands that solving his problems for him would deprive him of the learning experiences that are essential for his growth and development. This creates a constant tension between her natural impulse to help and her sophisticated understanding of what genuine help actually requires in the long term. Darwin's innocent optimism and genuine goodness touch something deep in Anais's heart, reminding her of qualities she fears she might be losing as her understanding of the world's complexities continues to expand. His ability to maintain faith in the essential goodness of existence despite the disappointments and betrayals that inevitably accompany growing up serves as both inspiration and reproach, showing her what she might have been if intelligence had not forced her to see past the comforting illusions that protect simpler minds from life's harshest truths. The school environment presents its own unique challenges for someone navigating the treacherous territory between childhood and premature wisdom. For Anais must interact with peers who share her chronological age but possess radically different levels of intellectual and emotional development. Her classmates engage with learning as play, approaching their studies with the natural curiosity and unself-conscious enthusiasm that characterizes healthy childhood development, while she cannot escape the awareness that education is preparation for an adult world that is far more complex and demanding than any of them yet understand. Her teachers face their own difficulties in relating to someone whose intellectual capacities exceed their own in many areas. While her emotional and social needs remain those of a young child, they must find ways to challenge her academically without overwhelming her emotionally, to provide the intellectual stimulation she requires, while also ensuring that she receives the nurturing and protection that all children need, regardless of their cognitive abilities. The isolation that results from this mismatch between intellectual and emotional development becomes particularly acute during social interactions with her age peers, who naturally gravitate toward activities and conversations that reflect their developmental stage, while she struggles to find engagement in pursuits that her advanced understanding has rendered either trivial or transparently artificial. She cannot pretend to care deeply about the social dramas and competitive games that consume her classmates, yet she desperately wants to belong to their world, to experience the simple joys of childhood that her premature wisdom has made increasingly inaccessible. The burden of knowledge extends beyond personal relationships to encompass her growing understanding of the broader social and economic systems that govern their community and the wider world beyond Elmore. Where other children naturally accept the rules and structures that organize their daily lives, Anais can see through to the arbitrary nature of many social conventions, the economic inequalities that create disadvantages for some while providing privileges for others, the political forces that shape their community's development in ways that benefit certain interests while ignoring the needs of others. This systemic awareness creates its own form of existential weight, for she begins to understand how individual choices and efforts are constrained by larger forces that operate beyond any single person's control or influence. Her natural impulse toward problem-solving collides with the recognition that many of the problems she can identify so clearly are embedded in structures too large and complex for any individual action to meaningfully address, creating a sense of frustrated powerlessness that compounds the isolation resulting from her intellectual precocity. Her relationship with learning itself becomes complicated, as she recognizes that knowledge often brings pain as well as power, that understanding frequently replaces comfort with complexity, that wisdom tends to eliminate the simple certainties that make life manageable for those who are not forced to see past them. She begins to understand why many adults actively avoid deep thinking about certain subjects, why ignorance is sometimes chosen rather than imposed, why the phrase "ignorance is bliss" carries truth that becomes more apparent as one's understanding of reality's darker aspects continues to expand. Yet despite these challenges and burdens, Anais continues to pursue knowledge and understanding with a determination that speaks to something fundamental about her character and perhaps about the nature of consciousness itself. She cannot choose to become less intelligent, cannot willfully return to the simpler understanding that might make her happier, cannot abandon the quest for truth and meaning that her mind seems naturally driven to pursue, regardless of the emotional costs involved. This commitment to intellectual growth, despite its painful consequences, represents a form of courage that is often overlooked or undervalued in cultures that prioritize emotional comfort over difficult truths. Anais demonstrates daily that the willingness to face reality honestly, to continue learning even when learning brings discomfort, to maintain curiosity even when curiosity leads to disturbing discoveries, requires a form of bravery that is perhaps more admirable than more obviously heroic forms of courage. The influence of her premature wisdom on her family dynamics becomes increasingly apparent as she begins to serve, unofficially and often unconsciously, as an emotional and intellectual resource for other family members who find themselves facing challenges that exceed their natural capacities for understanding or resolution. Nicole occasionally turns to her for perspective on complex family problems, while Richard's intuitive wisdom sometimes finds validation and articulation through Anais's more systematic approach to analysis and understanding. Even Gumball and Darwin, despite being older and in many ways more worldly, sometimes seek her counsel when facing problems that require the kind of deep thinking and careful analysis that her intellectual gifts make possible. Yet these consulting relationships create their own complications, as Anais must learn to share her insights in ways that are helpful without being overwhelming, supportive without being condescending, honest without being unnecessarily harsh or discouraging. The responsibility of being her family's informal philosopher and problem solver adds another layer to the burdens she carries, for she must not only deal with her own struggles with premature understanding, but also help others navigate challenges that she can see clearly, but they experience as confusing or overwhelming. This caretaking role, while meaningful and sometimes satisfying, also prevents her from receiving the kind of intellectual and emotional support that she herself needs to develop in healthy and sustainable ways. Her growing awareness of global issues, environmental degradation, social injustice, economic inequality, political corruption, extends her burden of knowledge beyond personal and family concerns to encompass the vast suffering and dysfunction that characterizes much of human civilization. She begins to understand that the problems she observes in her immediate environment are reflections of larger systemic failures that affect millions of people, that the personal struggles of her family and community are connected to broader patterns of social organization that create unnecessary hardship for countless individuals who deserve better than what they receive. This expanded awareness brings with it questions about moral responsibility and effective action that most adults struggle to answer satisfactorily. What obligations does knowledge create? How should someone who understands complex problems but lacks the power to address them directly choose to live? Is it better to focus on local issues where individual action might make some difference, or to engage with global concerns that seem more important but less susceptible to personal influence? The weight of these questions, combined with her ongoing struggles with age-appropriate development and family relationships, creates a form of existential pressure that threatens to overwhelm her natural resilience and optimism. She begins to experience what might be called philosophical depression, a form of sadness that springs not from personal disappointment or trauma, but from the sheer difficulty of existing as a conscious being in a universe that often seems indifferent to suffering and resistant to the rational solutions that intelligence might propose. Yet even in the depths of this intellectual and emotional complexity, Anais demonstrates remarkable strength and adaptability, finding ways to maintain her essential humanity and connection to others, despite the isolating effects of her premature wisdom. She learns to modulate her intellectual intensity when interacting with those who need gentleness rather than analysis, to find joy in simple pleasures, even when her understanding of their temporary nature threatens to diminish their immediate value. To love her family and friends, not because they are perfect, but because love itself represents a choice to affirm life's value, despite its inevitable limitations and disappointments. Her journey through the landscape of premature wisdom offers important insights into the nature of knowledge, growth, and human development that extend far beyond her individual experience. Her example suggests that intelligence without emotional support can become a burden rather than a gift, that understanding without community can lead to isolation rather than fulfillment, that wisdom without love can transform into cynicism rather than enlightenment. The broader community of Elmore serves as both context and contrast for Aeneas's intellectual development, providing examples of different approaches to the challenges of consciousness and understanding. Some adults, she observes, have chosen various forms of willful ignorance, protecting themselves from difficult truths through deliberate inattention or active denial. Others have found ways to balance knowledge with action, using their understanding as motivation for positive engagement rather than grounds for despair or withdrawal. The educational system itself becomes a subject of her analysis and critique, as she recognizes how traditional approaches to learning often fail to prepare students for the complex realities they will face as adults, how the focus on memorization and compliance often discourages the kind of critical thinking and creative problem-solving that genuinely difficult challenges require. She begins to envision alternative approaches to education that might better serve developing minds, though she also recognizes the systemic obstacles that prevent such innovations from being easily implemented. Her relationship with technology and media exposes her to information and perspectives that further accelerate her intellectual development, while also creating new forms of anxiety and overwhelm. The global connectivity that modern communication makes possible brings distant suffering and injustice into immediate awareness, making it impossible to maintain the kind of provincial innocence that might otherwise protect developing minds from premature exposure to humanity's darkest impulses and greatest failures. Yet technology also provides her with access to knowledge, ideas, and communities that help her feel less alone in her intellectual journey, connecting her with others who share her interests in complex questions, and her commitment to understanding reality honestly, despite the emotional challenges such understanding creates. These virtual connections, while not substituting for the local relationships she needs for healthy development, provide important validation and support that help her maintain perspective and hope during particularly difficult periods of growth and learning. The seasonal rhythms that govern life in Elmore create natural opportunities for reflection on the themes of growth, change, and the passage of time that are central to Aeneas's experience of premature wisdom. She observes how other community members respond to these natural cycles, noting how some embrace change while others resist it, how some find meaning in patterns of renewal, while others experience them as reminders of loss and limitation. Her own relationship with time becomes increasingly complex as she recognizes how her accelerated intellectual development has created a disconnect between her internal sense of maturity and her external circumstances, between her understanding of life's complexities and her limited power to address them effectively. She experiences a form of temporal displacement, feeling simultaneously too young for her insights and too old for her situation, caught between different developmental stages without fully belonging to any of them. In the end, Aeneas's journey through the terrain of premature wisdom reveals both the costs and the possibilities inherent in the human capacity for understanding, growth, and conscious development. Her experience suggests that while knowledge may indeed bring suffering, the alternative of willful ignorance brings its own forms of limitation and ultimately provides less satisfactory foundations for meaningful existence. She demonstrates that it is possible to bear the burden of understanding while maintaining one's essential humanity, to face difficult truths while preserving hope, to grow intellectually while remaining connected to the emotional and social relationships that give life its deepest meaning and value. In the vast theatrical stage of existence where the residents of Elmore perform their daily dramas of growth and discovery, there lurks a question so fundamental and terrifying that most conscious beings spend their entire lives avoiding its direct contemplation. It is the recognition that beneath all the elaborate structures of meaning that civilizations construct, beneath all the purposes and goals and grand narratives that give shape to individual lives, beneath all the careful explanations and rational systems that promise to make sense of experience, there lies an abyss of pure randomness, a cosmic indifference so complete that it renders all human striving simultaneously precious and pointless, meaningful and absurd. This is the existential territory where consciousness confronts its own ultimate limitations, where the human need for purpose collides with the universe's apparent lack of inherent meaning, where the desperate search for significance must somehow coexist with the growing suspicion that such significance might be nothing more than a comforting illusion, constructed to shield fragile minds from truths too vast and empty for mortale compréhension. In Elmore, as perhaps everywhere, this confrontation between meaning and meaninglessness plays out in countless small moments and grand gestures that reveal both the futility and the necessity of the human attempt to impose order upon chaos. The absurdist nature of their daily existence becomes most apparent when viewed from sufficient distance to perceive the patterns that govern their community's development and the curious lack of connection between cause and effect that characterizes so many of their experiences. Events occur not because they follow from previous events through logical chains of causation, but because they serve narrative purposes that exist independently of rational explanation, creating a reality where coincidence becomes the norm rather than the exception, where the impossible happens so frequently that it loses its capacity to surprise, where the fundamental laws of physics and logic bend like rubber bands to accommodate whatever story requirements might arise. Gumball himself has begun to recognize this arbitrary quality that underlies so much of what happens around him, though his understanding remains fragmented and incomplete, manifesting more as intuitive unease than conscious philosophical awareness. He has started to notice how many of his adventures begin with circumstances so unlikely that they border on the statistically impossible, how solutions to complex problems often present themselves through coincidences so convenient that they suggest the intervention of forces that operate beyond the normal boundaries of chance and probability. This growing awareness creates a peculiar form of existential vertigo, for if the events of his life are governed more by narrative convenience than by rational causation, what does that say about his own agency, his ability to make meaningful choices, his capacity to shape his destiny through conscious intention and sustained effort? The recognition that he might be less the author of his own story than a character in someone else's narrative threatens to undermine the very foundations of self-determination and personal responsibility upon which healthy psychological development typically depends. Yet rather than surrendering to paralyzing despair in the face of this cosmic arbitrariness, Gumball has developed an approach to existence that embraces absurdity while still maintaining hope, that acknowledges the random nature of events while continuing to act as though his choices matter, that recognizes the ultimate meaninglessness of the universe, while still finding ways to create local pockets of significance through relationships, creativity, and the simple but profound act of caring about others despite their obvious limitations and flaws. His various schemes and adventures, when viewed through this philosophical lens, become less attempts to achieve specific practical goals than exercises in meaning-making, desperate and beautiful efforts to create purpose through action, to impose narrative coherence upon experiences that often resist rational explanation or systematic understanding. Each plan he devises, regardless of its ultimate success or failure, represents a small act of rebellion against the cosmic indifference that threatens to render all human effort pointless and all human suffering meaningless. The elaborate nature of these schemes, their tendency toward complexity and convolution that far exceeds what practical necessity might require, reveals something important about the human response to absurdity and meaninglessness. Rather than choosing the simple and efficient solutions that rational analysis might recommend, Gumball gravitates toward approaches that are creative, theatrical, unnecessarily complicated, as if the process of planning and executing these adventures matters more than their practical outcomes, as if the act of imposing complex order upon simple problems serves needs that go far beyond mere problem solving. His relationship with failure becomes particularly revealing when examined through this lens, for his response to setbacks and disappointments demonstrates a resilience that cannot be explained by simple optimism or naive faith in eventual success. Instead, his ability to bounce back from disasters and continue pursuing new schemes despite their inevitable complications suggests an unconscious understanding that the value of his efforts lies not in their practical achievements, but in their symbolic significance, their function as assertions of human agency and creativity in the face of a universe that offers no guarantee that such assertions will be rewarded or even acknowledged. Darwin's presence as constant companion and supporter in these various adventures provides crucial emotional infrastructure that makes Gumball's approach to absurdity sustainable and psychologically healthy. His unwavering loyalty and enthusiasm serve as both anchor and amplifier for his adoptive brother's meaning-making efforts, creating a partnership that transforms individual rebellion against cosmic meaninglessness into shared celebration of the possibilities inherent in conscious existence, regardless of whether those possibilities ultimately lead anywhere significant or permanent. The goldfish, who became a boy, brings to their relationship a perspective shaped by his own miraculous transformation from simple biological existence to complex consciousness, a journey that has given him direct experiential knowledge of how radically reality can shift when approached with sufficient love and determination. His faith in the possibility of positive change, even in circumstances that appear hopeless or absurd, provides essential emotional support for Gumball's more analytical and sometimes pessimistic tendencies, creating a dynamic balance that allows both of them to engage fully with life's challenges without being overwhelmed by their ultimate implications. Darwin's natural optimism serves as a constant reminder that meaning can be found not through grand philosophical systems or elaborate theoretical frameworks, but through the simple practice of treating other beings with kindness, curiosity, and respect. His approach to existence demonstrates that while the universe might indeed be absurd and ultimately meaningless, the experience of consciousness itself creates opportunities for joy, wonder, and connection that possess their own inherent value, regardless of their cosmic significance or lack thereof. The school environment of Elmore Junior High provides a particularly rich context for exploring the tension between imposed meaning and discovered purpose, between institutional expectations and individual creativity, between the systematic approach to learning that formal education represents and the chaotic, experiential approach to understanding that characterizes most genuine insight and growth. The students who populate this educational institution must navigate between conforming to external requirements and maintaining their authentic curiosity, between achieving the metrics of success that their society considers important and pursuing the kinds of knowledge and experience that actually contribute to meaningful personal development. Miss Simeon's classroom becomes a microcosm of this larger tension, where the official curriculum designed to prepare students for adult responsibilities collides with the actual interests and needs of developing minds that are naturally drawn toward questions and subjects that may have little connection to standardized educational objectives. Her cynical approach to teaching reflects her own recognition of the arbitrary nature of much educational content. The disconnect between what schools claim to accomplish and what they actually achieve, the way institutional requirements often prevent rather than facilitate genuine learning and growth. Yet even within this flawed system, moments of authentic education occasionally occur, usually when teachers and students temporarily abandon their prescribed roles and engage with each other as fellow human beings struggling to make sense of complex realities. These breakthrough moments demonstrate that meaning can emerge even within absurd institutional frameworks when individuals choose to prioritize genuine connection and mutual understanding over the performance of predetermined educational rituals. Principal Brown's enthusiastic but often misguided attempts to improve the school through various initiatives and programs illustrate the tragicomic nature of administrative efforts to impose rational order upon the inherently chaotic process of human development and learning. His sincere belief that the right combination of policies and procedures can solve fundamental educational problems reveals both admirable commitment to his students' well-being and touching naivety about the limits of systematic approaches to complex human challenges. The family dinner table in the Watterson household serves as another stage for exploring the collision between meaningful human connection and the absurd circumstances that so often characterize domestic life. Here, around a simple piece of furniture, four very different consciousnesses attempt to maintain family bonds while also expressing their individual personalities, needs, and perspectives, creating a daily ritual that is simultaneously profound and ridiculous, deeply meaningful, and utterly arbitrary. Nicole's efforts to maintain some semblance of normal family structure, despite the chaos that naturally surrounds their household, represent a heroic commitment to the possibility that conscious intention and sustained effort can create pockets of order and meaning within a fundamentally disordered universe. Her determination to provide her children with stable routines, consistent values, and reliable emotional support demonstrates faith in the importance of such efforts that persists despite abundant evidence that the universe itself provides no guarantee that such care will be rewarded or that such stability will persist. Richard's approach to family participation operates according to different principles altogether. His childlike spontaneity and disregard for conventional expectations, creating a kind of natural counterbalance to Nicole's more systematic approach to domestic management. His ability to find joy and wonder in simple experiences, to remain present to immediate pleasures and satisfactions without constant concern about their larger implications or long-term consequences, provides essential emotional nutrients that help maintain family cohesion despite the various pressures and challenges that threaten to pull them apart. The contrast between their parenting styles illustrates broader philosophical differences about how conscious beings should respond to the recognition of life's fundamental absurdity. Nicole's approach suggests that the appropriate response is to work harder to create meaning and order, to take responsibility for outcomes, even when those outcomes depend on factors beyond individual control, to maintain hope and effort, despite the ultimate uncertainty of their effectiveness. Richard's approach suggests that acceptance and present moment awareness might be more sustainable and ultimately more satisfying responses to cosmic meaninglessness, that the attempt to control outcomes often creates more suffering than the simple practice of engaging fully with whatever experiences arise naturally. Anais occupies a unique position within these family dynamics, her intellectual precocity, allowing her to perceive the philosophical tensions that operate beneath the surface of their daily interactions, while her emotional development remains appropriate to her chronological age. She can see the absurdist elements in their family structure, the arbitrary nature of many parental decisions, the way individual personalities and preferences shape household rules that are then presented as rational necessities. Yet she also recognizes the genuine love and commitment that motivate these seemingly arbitrary arrangements. Her perspective on the family's meaning-making efforts carries the complexity that comes from understanding both the artificial nature of many social constructions and their genuine importance for psychological well-being and social functioning. She knows that family traditions, household rules, and parental authority are in many ways arbitrary cultural inventions rather than natural necessities. Yet she also understands that these constructions serve crucial functions in creating stability, identity, and belonging that developing minds require for healthy growth. The broader community of Elmore provides countless additional examples of the collision between human meaning-making efforts and cosmic absurdity, from the shopping mall, where consumers pursue satisfaction through material acquisition, despite abundant evidence that such satisfaction remains perpetually elusive, to the various businesses and organizations where adults perform roles that often seem disconnected from any clear purpose beyond their own economic survival and social acceptability. The mayor and other civic leaders engage in elaborate rituals of governance and public service that create the illusion of rational social planning and democratic accountability, while the actual decisions that shape community development often seem to follow patterns that have more to do with individual personalities, economic pressures, and historical accidents than with systematic analysis of community needs or carefully considered long-term planning strategies. Yet even these apparently arbitrary institutional arrangements serve important functions in providing structure, identity, and shared purpose for community members who need such frameworks to organize their individual efforts and maintain social cohesion. The recognition that these structures are artificial and often absurd does not necessarily diminish their practical value or their psychological importance for the individuals who participate in them, creating a complex relationship between critique and participation, analysis and acceptance. The various celebrations and festivals that punctuate community life throughout the year provide particularly clear examples of how human beings create meaning through shared rituals and collective activities that have no inherent significance beyond the significance that participants choose to invest in them. Holiday traditions, seasonal observances, and community gatherings serve as opportunities for residents to affirm their connections to each other and to the larger rhythms of time and change that govern their existence, creating temporary experiences of unity and purpose that help sustain individuals through the more isolated and difficult aspects of daily life. The arbitrary nature of many celebratory customs, the way different cultures attach profound significance to activities and symbols that appear meaningless to outsiders, illustrates both the flexibility of human meaning-making capacity and the essential role that shared participation plays in transforming arbitrary activities into genuinely meaningful experiences. The magic lies not in the activities themselves, but in the collective decision to treat them as significant, to invest them with attention and care that creates real emotional and social value, regardless of their ultimate cosmic importance. The romantic relationships that develop throughout their community demonstrate another dimension of the tension between meaning and absurdity. As individuals, commit enormous emotional energy to connections that are statistically likely to be temporary, and that depend on compatibility factors that are largely beyond conscious control or rational prediction. Yet these relationships, however temporary or difficult they may prove to be, create some of the most profound experiences of meaning and purpose that human consciousness can generate. The love between Gumball and Penny illustrates this paradox beautifully, for their connection possesses genuine depth and significance that cannot be dismissed as mere adolescent infatuation. Yet it also depends on circumstances and personal developments that are largely arbitrary and could easily change in ways that would make their relationship impossible or inappropriate to maintain. Their commitment to each other represents a choice to create meaning through mutual care and understanding, despite the ultimate uncertainty of their future together and the various external forces that could separate them. The various crises and disasters that periodically disrupt their community's normal routines serve as reminders of how quickly the careful constructions of meaning and purpose that define daily life can be swept away by forces that operate entirely beyond human control or understanding. Natural disasters, economic upheavals, social conflicts, and personal tragedies demonstrate the fragility of the structures upon which individual and collective meaning depends, yet they also reveal the remarkable human capacity to rebuild, to create new meanings from the wreckage of old ones, to maintain hope and connection even in the face of devastating loss. The community's response to these periodic disruptions illustrates different approaches to coping with the recognition that much of what we consider important and permanent is actually contingent and temporary. Some individuals respond by working harder to rebuild and strengthen the structures that have been damaged, investing renewed energy in creating stability and security that might better withstand future challenges. Others respond by loosening their attachment to external structures altogether, focusing instead on internal resources and relationships that seem less vulnerable to external disruption. The shopping mall and various commercial establishments that serve their community provide ongoing illustrations of the absurdist nature of much contemporary existence, where elaborate systems of production and consumption create the illusion of progress and achievement, while actually serving needs that are largely artificial and desires that are systematically cultivated rather than naturally occurring. Yet these same commercial spaces also serve as important social gathering places, where community members can encounter each other outside the more formal contexts of work, school, and family obligations. The workers who staff these various businesses face their own challenges in finding meaning and purpose within economic roles that often seem disconnected from any clear contribution to human well-being or social progress. Store clerks, managers, service providers, and other employees must find ways to maintain personal dignity and professional satisfaction while performing functions that may feel arbitrary or pointless when examined too closely, creating daily exercises in meaning-making that require considerable psychological skill and emotional resilience. The customers who patronize these establishments engage in their own forms of meaning-making through the act of consumption, using the acquisition of goods and services as a way of expressing identity, creating comfort, and participating in the larger economic systems that structure contemporary social life. The arbitrary nature of many consumer choices, the way marketing and social pressure shape preferences that individuals experience as personal and authentic, illustrates the complex relationship between individual agency and social construction in the creation of meaning and purpose. In the end, the exploration of absurdity and the search for purpose that characterizes life in Elmore reveals both the ultimate futility and the essential necessity of human efforts to create meaning in an apparently meaningless universe. The residents of their community have discovered that while the cosmos may indeed be indifferent to their struggles and achievements, the experience of consciousness itself creates opportunities for significance that transcend cosmic approval or disapproval. Their various approaches to meaning-making, from Gumball's elaborate schemes to Darwin's simple loyalty, from Nicole's fierce protectiveness to Richard's childlike wonder, from Ananias's intellectual seeking to the community's collective celebrations, demonstrate the remarkable human capacity to find or create purpose, even in circumstances that offer no external validation or guarantee of permanence. They have learned that meaning is not something to be discovered in the structure of reality itself, but something to be continuously created through choices, relationships, and the ongoing commitment to treat existence as though it matters, regardless of whether that mattering can be justified through any objective or universal standard. The absurd becomes not an enemy to be defeated, but a context within which authentic human values can be expressed and explored, a stage upon which the drama of consciousness can unfold in all its tragic and comic complexity. In embracing both the meaninglessness of their ultimate situation and the profound significance of their immediate experiences, the residents of Elmore have discovered a form of existential courage that transforms the recognition of absurdity from a source of despair into a foundation for authentic living. In the deepest chambers of consciousness, where the most fundamental questions about existence echo through corridors lined with uncertainty and dread, there dwells a terror so primal and universal that it shapes every other fear, influences every decision, and colors every moment of joy with the shadow of its inevitable arrival. This is the recognition of finality itself, the awareness that all things end, that every story concludes, that every consciousness which awakens to the miracle of its own existence must eventually confront the mystery of its own cessation. In the animated realm of Elmore, where resurrection often seems as simple as changing scenes, and where the laws of physics bend to accommodate narrative necessity, the concept of death becomes both more and less terrifying than it might be in more conventional realities. The paradox of mortality in their cartoon universe creates philosophical puzzles that have no easy resolution, for the residents of Elmore exist in a realm where characters can survive explosions that should vaporize them, recover from injuries that should be permanently debilitating, and bounce back from disasters that should logically result in their complete destruction. Yet, beneath this apparent invulnerability lies a more subtle and perhaps more disturbing form of mortality, the recognition that their continued existence depends not upon biological processes or physical durability, but upon factors entirely beyond their control or understanding. Gumball himself has experienced numerous encounters with what should have been death, moments when the normal laws of cause and effect suggested that his story should end permanently, yet each time he has somehow survived through circumstances that can only be described as miraculous or arbitrary, depending upon one's philosophical perspective. These near-death experiences have begun to accumulate in his consciousness like scar tissue, creating an awareness of his own vulnerability that coexists uneasily with the apparent evidence of his own indestructibility. The cognitive dissonance created by this contradiction between experienced vulnerability and demonstrated resilience generates a unique form of existential anxiety that has no precise analogue in normal human experience. How does one process the memory of being utterly destroyed while simultaneously possessing the lived experience of having survived that destruction? What does it mean to fear death when one has already died multiple times and returned without apparent consequence? The traditional frameworks for understanding mortality prove inadequate when applied to existence that operates according to rules that transcend normal biological limitations. His growing awareness of these contradictions has begun to influence his approach to risk and adventure, creating a complex relationship with danger that reflects his unconscious understanding of both his apparent invulnerability and his fundamental fragility. On one hand, his repeated survival of impossible circumstances has created a form of confidence that borders on recklessness, a willingness to engage in activities that would terrify more mortality-aware individuals. On the other hand, his direct experience of destruction and reconstruction has given him a visceral understanding of how quickly and completely everything he considers real and permanent can be eliminated. This dual awareness manifests in moments of startling courage, alternating with episodes of unexpected caution, creating a pattern of behavior that reflects his ongoing negotiation with the mystery of his own mortality. He has learned that while he may not be able to die in conventional terms, he can certainly suffer, can lose things that matter to him, can experience forms of ending that are qualitatively different from simple physical destruction, but equally devastating in their psychological and emotional impact. Darwin's relationship with mortality carries additional complexity due to his unique history of transformation from pet to person, a journey that has given him direct, experiential knowledge of what it means to transcend apparently absolute biological limitations. His evolution from fish to family member represents a form of death and rebirth that challenges conventional categories, for the simple consciousness that once inhabited his aquatic form bears little resemblance to the complex being he has become, yet some essential continuity of identity persists across this radical metamorphosis. This transformational background has created in Darwin a perspective on death that is both more accepting and more hopeful than what most beings develop, for he understands from direct experience that endings can be beginnings, that apparent destruction can be reconstruction, that the categories which seem most permanent and unchangeable can prove to be far more flexible than anyone imagines. His faith in the possibility of positive transformation, even in circumstances that appear hopeless, springs from lived knowledge rather than mere optimism or wishful thinking. Yet, this same background also creates its own forms of mortality. Anxiety. For Darwin occasionally worries that the miraculous transformation, which elevated him from pet to person, might be reversible, that the consciousness he has developed and the relationships he has formed might be as fragile as they were unexpected. The recognition that his current existence was never guaranteed, that it emerged from circumstances that were largely accidental and could presumably disappear through equally accidental processes, creates a unique appreciation for the precious and temporary nature of his conscious experience. His approach to the question of endings reflects this complex awareness, combining genuine acceptance of impermanence with fierce commitment to making the most of whatever time and opportunities are available. Darwin has learned to hold simultaneously the recognition that all things end and the determination to love fully and live authentically within whatever constraints those endings might impose, creating a philosophy of engagement that is both realistic about limitations and optimistic about possibilities. Nicole's confrontation with mortality operates on multiple levels, encompassing not only her own eventual ending, but her awareness of her family's vulnerability and her recognition of the various forms of death that threaten the relationships and structures she works so hard to protect and maintain. Her fierce protectiveness of her loved ones springs partly from her understanding of how quickly and completely the bonds that give life its meaning can be severed by forces that operate entirely beyond individual control or preparation. Her occasional transformations into an unstoppable force of nature can be understood partly as responses to mortality, anxiety, desperate attempts to assert power and control in situations where the normal limitations of individual agency become starkly apparent. When those she loves are threatened, when the structures that provide stability and security show signs of collapse, when the careful constructions of meaning and purpose that define their daily existence face challenges that exceed normal coping mechanisms, Nicole's latent power erupts as a form of rage against the dying of the light. Yet these same episodes also demonstrate the ultimate futility of trying to prevent all forms of ending through force or determination, for even her extraordinary abilities cannot eliminate the fundamental vulnerability that characterizes all conscious existence. Her transformations provide temporary solutions to immediate threats, but they cannot address the underlying condition of impermanence that makes such threats inevitable and recurring aspects of life in any form. The recognition of these limitations has led Nicole to develop coping strategies that focus more on preparation and acceptance than on prevention and control, learning to find peace through building resilience, rather than trying to eliminate all sources of potential loss. Her approach to family management reflects this philosophical evolution, combining appropriate protective measures with the wisdom to recognize when protection becomes overprotection and when the attempt to prevent all endings actually prevents authentic living. Richard's relationship with mortality concepts demonstrates his characteristic ability to find peace through acceptance rather than understanding. His intuitive grasp of truths that more analytical minds struggle to articulate or integrate. His apparent simplicity masks a profound comfort with impermanence that allows him to engage fully with life's pleasures and relationships, without the anxiety that awareness of endings often creates in more psychologically complex individuals. This acceptance does not spring from ignorance or denial, but from a form of wisdom that transcends rational analysis, a deep understanding that the attempt to cling to permanent security in an impermanent universe creates more suffering than the simple practice of appreciating whatever good things arise while they last. Richard has discovered through intuition what philosophers have struggled to express through elaborate theoretical frameworks, that the recognition of mortality can enhance rather than diminish life's value when approached with the right attitude and emotional orientation. His example provides important guidance for other family members who struggle more consciously with mortality, anxiety, demonstrating through lived behavior rather than verbal instruction how it might be possible to maintain joy and connection despite awareness of their temporary nature. His ability to find satisfaction in simple pleasures, to remain present to immediate experiences without constant worry about their duration or permanence, offers a model for approaching existence that maximizes fulfillment while minimizing the suffering that comes from excessive attachment to outcomes beyond individual control. Anais faces the question of endings with the intellectual sophistication that characterizes her approach to all complex subjects, yet her premature wisdom creates unique challenges in processing concepts that even adults find difficult to understand or accept. Her ability to grasp abstract philosophical principles about mortality coexists uneasily with the emotional needs and developmental requirements that characterize her chronological age, creating internal conflicts that have no simple resolution. Her understanding of death encompasses not only the biological fact of individual mortality, but also the various cultural, social, and psychological frameworks that different societies have developed for making sense of endings and their relationship to meaning and value. She can analyze these frameworks intellectually, recognize their functions and limitations, compare their strengths and weaknesses as responses to universal human concerns. Yet she struggles to find personal comfort or guidance in abstract theoretical approaches to fundamentally experiential questions. The burden of her premature awareness includes recognition of the various forms of ending that threaten not only individual lives, but entire civilizations, species, and ultimately the universe itself, creating layers of mortality anxiety that extend far beyond personal concerns to encompass cosmic and existential dimensions that most beings her age never consider. This expanded awareness brings with it questions about the ultimate meaning and value of any individual effort or achievement when viewed against the backdrop of universal entropy and eventual dissolution. Yet, even in the face of these overwhelming philosophical challenges, Anais continues to find motivation for engagement and growth, suggesting that the human capacity to create meaning and purpose can persist even when confronted with the most comprehensive understanding of impermanence and limitation. Her example demonstrates that intellectual awareness of endings need not eliminate emotional investment in beginnings and continuations, that consciousness can simultaneously acknowledge mortality and affirm life in ways that transcend rational consistency or logical coherence. The school environment provides numerous contexts for exploring different aspects of mortality and ending, from the academic study of historical figures who have died to the practical experience of concluding projects, graduating from grade levels, and saying goodbye to teachers and classmates who move away or transition to different educational settings. Each of these experiences provides opportunities for students to practice engaging with various forms of conclusion and separation in relatively safe and structured contexts. Miss Simeon's cynical perspective on education reflects partly her own confrontation with the ending of youthful idealism and the gradual recognition that many of the goals and values that motivated her career choice have proven to be unrealistic or unachievable. Her bitter humor and sarcastic commentary serve as defense mechanisms against the disappointment that comes from recognizing the gap between educational aspirations and practical limitations, between what teachers hope to accomplish and what institutional constraints allow them to achieve. Yet even within her apparent jadedness lies a deeper commitment to the educational process that persists despite her intellectual recognition of its limitations and frustrations. Her continued engagement with teaching, however reluctant or critical it may appear, represents a form of faith in the value of human development and learning that survives even the most thorough disillusionment with specific institutional arrangements or pedagogical approaches. Principal Brown's enthusiastic approach to school administration demonstrates a different response to the recognition of institutional limitation and individual mortality, choosing optimism and persistent effort over cynicism and defensive detachment. His various initiatives and programs represent attempts to create positive change within whatever time and resources are available, accepting the likelihood of only partial success while maintaining commitment to the attempt itself. The playground and recreational spaces where students gather during their free time become laboratories for experimenting with different approaches to risk, danger, and the possibility of injury or harm. Children's natural attraction to activities that involve some element of physical risk reflects partly their unconscious exploration of mortality concepts, their need to test the boundaries of safety and security in order to develop appropriate relationships with danger and vulnerability. The games and activities that emerge from these explorations often involve symbolic representations of death and resurrection, conflict and resolution, ending and beginning, providing safe contexts for processing psychological material that might be too intense or overwhelming if encountered directly. tag games that involve being killed and revived, competitive activities that create temporary winners and losers, imaginative play that explores themes of heroism and sacrifice, all serve important developmental functions in helping young minds learn to navigate the emotional territory surrounding mortality and loss. The community's response to various crises and emergencies provides ongoing education about different approaches to mortality, anxiety, and the management of situations where ending seems imminent or unavoidable. Natural disasters, accidents, and other emergency situations create opportunities for residents to discover resources of courage, cooperation, and resilience that they might not know they possessed until circumstances demand their activation. The emergency responders and medical professionals who serve their community face daily encounters with human vulnerability and the reality of physical limitation, creating careers that require constant navigation of the boundary between hope and acceptance, between intervention and recognition of natural limits. Their work provides essential services while also serving as reminders to the broader community about the fragility of the circumstances that most people take for granted most of the time. The various religious and philosophical institutions that serve Elmore's spiritual needs provide frameworks for understanding mortality that range from elaborate doctrinal systems promising eternal life to simpler practices focused on finding peace with impermanence and natural cycles. These different approaches to the ultimate questions about death and meaning create options for community members who need structured support in processing their own mortality awareness and developing sustainable relationships with the fact of ending. The seasonal cycles that govern life in their community provide natural opportunities for reflection on themes of death and renewal, ending and beginning, the way that apparent conclusions often prove to be transitions rather than final terminations. The annual death and rebirth of vegetation, the migration patterns of various animal species, the predictable succession of weather patterns, all serve as reminders that endings are often followed by new beginnings, that death and life exist in dynamic relationship rather than simple opposition. Yet these same natural cycles also provide reminders of genuine finitude, of species that become extinct, of individuals who die without obvious renewal or replacement, of changes that appear to be irreversible rather than cyclical. The complexity of natural patterns prevents simple or sentimental interpretations of mortality, requiring more nuanced understanding that can accommodate both renewal and genuine loss, both continuity and authentic ending. The artistic and cultural productions that emerge from their community often explore mortality themes in ways that allow residents to process difficult emotions and concepts through aesthetic experience rather than direct confrontation. Stories, music, visual art, and other creative expressions provide safe spaces for exploring feelings about death and loss, while also offering opportunities for discovering meaning and beauty that can coexist with awareness of impermanence. The creation of these cultural artifacts serves additional functions beyond individual emotional processing, contributing to the community's collective memory and providing ways for individual experiences and insights to persist beyond the biological lifespans of their creators. Art becomes a form of immortality project, an attempt to create something that will outlast the physical existence of the artist, while also serving present needs for meaning-making and emotional expression. The economic activities that sustain their community operate partly as elaborate systems for managing mortality, anxiety, providing structures of purpose and achievement that create the illusion of permanent significance, while actually serving shorter-term needs for security and social connection. The accumulation of wealth, the building of businesses, the development of professional reputations, all represent attempts to create lasting impact that can transcend individual biological limitations. Yet these same economic structures also create their own forms of mortality awareness. As businesses fail, careers end, and economic systems undergo transformations that can eliminate entire categories of work or render specific skills obsolete. The marketplace serves as a constant reminder that nothing remains permanently valuable or secure, that all human constructions are subject to forces of change and dissolution that operate independently of individual intentions or efforts. The various forms of entertainment and recreation that characterize leisure time in Elmore often involve symbolic explorations of mortality themes, from competitive sports that create temporary winners and losers to games that involve risk and chance, from movies and television programs that explore themes of heroism and sacrifice, to more interactive forms of play that allow participants to experiment with different roles and outcomes. These recreational activities serve important psychological functions by providing safe contexts for processing anxiety about endings, while also offering opportunities for experiencing various forms of symbolic triumph over limitation and both loss. The temporary nature of most entertainment experiences mirrors the temporary nature of life itself, yet the meaning and satisfaction derived from these activities demonstrates the human capacity to find value in experiences regardless of their duration or permanence. The relationships and social bonds that give shape to community life in Elmore operate under the constant awareness that all connections are temporary, that every friendship will eventually end through death, distance, or changing circumstances. Yet this awareness need not prevent the formation of meaningful attachments or the investment of emotional energy in caring about others. The recognition of relationship mortality can actually enhance appreciation for present connections, creating motivation to express love and appreciation while opportunities still exist. The various forms of goodbye that punctuate social life, from daily partings to major life transitions, provide ongoing practice with separation and loss, while also demonstrating the human capacity to maintain emotional bonds across physical distance and temporal limitation. The skills developed through managing minor separations serve as preparation for more significant losses, while also creating patterns of resilience that can be activated when more serious challenges arise. In the end, the exploration of death, endings, and the fear of finality that permeates life in Elmore reveals both the universal nature of mortality anxiety and the remarkable human capacity to find meaning, purpose, and joy despite awareness of impermanence. The residents of their community have discovered various approaches to managing their relationships with ending, from acceptance and preparation to denial and desperate activity, from philosophical analysis to intuitive wisdom, from individual coping strategies to collective meaning-making systems. Their diverse responses to mortality awareness demonstrate that while the fact of ending may be universal, the ways of understanding and responding to that fact remain open to choice, creativity, and personal adaptation. Some find peace through faith in continuity beyond physical death, others through acceptance of natural cycles and renewal, still others through focus on present experience and immediate relationships that provide satisfaction, regardless of their ultimate duration. The Watterson family, in their chaotic love and their stubborn refusal to be defeated by awareness of limitation, represents a particularly beautiful example of how mortality awareness can enhance rather than diminish life's value. Their recognition that their time together is finite makes them more appreciative of present moments, more motivated to express their love actively, more committed to creating memories and experiences that will retain meaning regardless of how long they persist in individual consciousness or collective memory. They have learned that while death may indeed be the ultimate ending that awaits all conscious beings, the fear of that ending need not prevent authentic living, genuine loving, or meaningful contribution to the ongoing human project of creating significance within apparent insignificance, purpose within apparent purposelessness, beauty within the recognition of universal impermanence. In the gentle twilight of understanding that follows the storm of existential questioning, where the harsh winds of doubt have finally settled into the calm recognition of what cannot be changed and what need not be feared, there emerges a different kind of wisdom altogether. This is the territory of acceptance, not as defeat or resignation, but as the deepest form of courage. The recognition that peace comes not from solving all of life's mysteries or eliminating all of its contradictions, but from learning to dance gracefully with uncertainty, to find beauty in imperfection, to discover meaning in the very act of embracing what is, rather than mourning what might have been. The Watterson family has arrived at this place of acceptance, not through any single moment of revelation, but through the accumulated experience of surviving countless crises, weathering innumerable storms, and discovering again and again that love proves stronger than logic, that connection transcends comprehension, that the simple act of remaining present to each other through all the chaos and confusion somehow transforms that chaos into something approaching sacred dance. They have learned that perfection is not only impossible, but ultimately unnecessary, that the flawed reality they actually inhabit together is infinitely more precious than any idealized existence they might imagine. This acceptance manifests most clearly in their approach to daily life, the way they have learned to find profound contentment in ordinary moments that might appear mundane to outside observers, but that glow with quiet significance for those who have learned to see them properly. The morning ritual of breakfast preparation becomes an exercise in collaborative improvisation, where Nicole's attempts at nutritional planning collide beautifully with Richard's culinary creativity and the children's various dietary preferences and restrictions to create meals that satisfy no one completely yet somehow nourish everyone adequately. These domestic scenes, repeated with infinite variation across seasons and years, represent the triumph of acceptance over perfectionism, the discovery that functional love requires not the elimination of all friction and disagreement, but the development of skills for navigating difference with grace and humor. The family has learned that harmony does not mean the absence of discord, but rather the presence of commitment to working through discord together, to finding ways of honoring individual needs while maintaining collective cohesion. Gumball himself has undergone a gradual transformation in his relationship to the various contradictions and impossibilities that define his existence, moving from frustrated attempts to impose rational order upon inherently irrational circumstances toward a more playful and accepting engagement with the absurd elements that characterize his daily experience. His schemes and adventures have evolved from desperate attempts to control outcomes toward more exploratory and creative responses to whatever challenges present themselves, embracing uncertainty as opportunity rather than treating it as obstacle. This philosophical evolution reflects his growing understanding that the value of his efforts lies not in their practical success or failure, but in their expression of his authentic nature and his commitment to remaining actively engaged with life despite its fundamental unpredictability. He has learned that planning and striving remain worthwhile activities, even when their outcomes cannot be guaranteed, that hope and effort create their own forms of meaning regardless of whether they achieve their stated objectives. His relationship with failure has become particularly instructive, for he has discovered that disappointment and setback need not eliminate joy or destroy motivation, but can actually deepen appreciation for whatever successes and satisfactions do arise. The contrast provided by difficult experiences makes positive moments more vivid and meaningful, while the knowledge gained through encountering limitations provides practical wisdom that proves valuable in navigating future challenges. Darwin's natural wisdom has served as both inspiration and anchor for this family journey toward acceptance, his intuitive understanding of impermanence and change providing emotional stability for other family members who struggle more consciously with questions about meaning and purpose. His approach to relationships demonstrates the possibility of loving completely without demanding perfection, of committing fully while accepting uncertainty, of investing deeply in connections that may not last forever, but that provide profound satisfaction and growth while they persist. His loyalty to Gumball has evolved from simple devotion into something more complex and mature, a form of love that honors his brother's autonomy while offering consistent support that provides guidance without attempting control, that creates space for individual growth within the context of enduring connection. This evolution illustrates the possibility of maintaining close relationships while allowing for change and development, of loving people as they are, while also encouraging them to become who they might be. The goldfish who became a boy has discovered that his own transformation was not a destination to be reached, but a process to be continued, that the miracle of his evolution from pet to person was not a single event, but an ongoing commitment to growth and adaptation that must be renewed daily through choices and actions. His acceptance of this ongoing nature of development has freed him from the anxiety of trying to prove his worthiness or secure his position within the family permanently, allowing him to engage authentically with each day's opportunities and challenges. Nicole's journey toward acceptance has perhaps been the most difficult and dramatic, given her natural temperament toward control and her deep sense of responsibility for her family's well-being and security. Her gradual recognition that she cannot protect her loved ones from all harm, cannot solve all their problems, cannot eliminate all sources of uncertainty and difficulty from their lives, initially created intense frustration and anxiety that occasionally erupted in spectacular displays of barely contained power and rage. Yet through the experience of learning to live with these limitations, Nicole has discovered forms of strength and wisdom that her previous approach to family management had not allowed her to develop. Her acceptance of imperfection has created space for other family members to develop their own capabilities and resilience, while her recognition of uncertainty has allowed her to appreciate the present moment more fully, rather than constantly worrying about future possibilities that may never materialize. Her relationship with Richard has deepened as she has learned to appreciate his approach to life, not as irresponsibility or laziness, but as a different and equally valid response to the fundamental challenges of conscious existence. His ability to find satisfaction in simple pleasures, to remain present to immediate experience without constant calculation and planning, to maintain optimism despite awareness of limitation, has gradually revealed itself as a form of wisdom that complements rather than competes with her more analytical and practical approach to problem solving. The partnership they have created together demonstrates the possibility of finding strength through difference rather than similarity, of building stable relationship foundations upon complementary approaches to life's challenges rather than identical perspectives or methods. Their marriage has become a daily exercise in acceptance and mutual appreciation, a living demonstration that love can transcend personality differences and philosophical disagreements when both parties remain committed to understanding and supporting each other. Richard's contribution to this family journey toward acceptance has been both profound and largely unconscious. His natural orientation toward contentment and present moment awareness, serving as constant reminder that peace is available even in imperfect circumstances, that joy can be found even when problems remain unsolved, that love can flourish even when understanding remains incomplete. His example suggests that acceptance is not something to be achieved through effort and analysis, but something to be allowed through the simple practice of releasing the need for everything to be different from what it actually is. His relationship with his children illustrates the possibility of providing meaningful guidance and support without claiming authority based on superior knowledge or capability, of being helpful without being controlling, of expressing love through presence and attention, rather than through attempts to shape or direct their development according to predetermined plans. His approach to parenting demonstrates that acceptance does not mean passivity or indifference, but rather a form of engaged non-attachment that honors both individual autonomy and relational connection. Anais has found her own path toward acceptance through the gradual recognition that intelligence and understanding, while valuable gifts, need not become burdens that separate her from others or create impossible expectations for herself and those around her. Her premature wisdom has slowly revealed itself as an invitation to compassion rather than judgment, to appreciation of diversity rather than frustration with limitation, to wonder at the mystery of consciousness rather than anxiety about its ultimate implications. Her intellectual abilities have evolved from sources of isolation into opportunities for connection as she has learned to use her analytical skills in service of understanding and supporting others, rather than simply to satisfy her own curiosity or demonstrate her capabilities. This transformation illustrates the possibility of channeling exceptional gifts toward purposes that enhance, rather than diminish community and relationship, that contribute to collective well-being rather than individual achievement alone. The young rabbit's journey through the landscape of premature awareness has taught her that wisdom is not primarily about having answers to difficult questions, but about developing better questions that open rather than close possibilities for growth and understanding. She has learned that the goal of intellectual development is not to achieve certainty or eliminate mystery, but to become more skillful at navigating uncertainty with grace and maintaining wonder despite knowledge of limitation and imperfection. The school environment has served as an important laboratory for practicing acceptance in social contexts that involve multiple perspectives, competing interests, and inevitable conflicts that cannot be resolved through simple compromise or rational analysis. Students and teachers alike have had opportunities to learn that community formation requires acceptance of difference rather than elimination of diversity, that successful cooperation depends more upon mutual respect than upon agreement or similarity. Miss Simeon's classroom has gradually evolved from a space of cynical resignation into something approaching wisdom, as her experience with countless students across many years has taught her that education is not primarily about transferring information or shaping behavior, but about creating opportunities for discovery and growth that must ultimately be seized by learners themselves rather than imposed by external authority. Her relationship with her students has mellowed from antagonistic control towards something more like collaborative exploration, as she has learned to appreciate the unique perspectives and capabilities that each individual brings to the learning process, while also maintaining appropriate structure and guidance. This evolution illustrates the possibility of finding professional satisfaction and meaning, even within institutional constraints that initially appear to limit authentic engagement and creative expression. Principal Brown's administrative approach has similarly evolved toward greater acceptance of the inherent limitations that characterize educational institutions, while maintaining commitment to creating the best possible environment for learning and development within those constraints. His various initiatives and programs have become less desperate attempts to achieve perfect outcomes and more thoughtful experiments in supporting human potential, while acknowledging the complex factors that influence educational success. The broader community of Elmore has developed its own forms of collective acceptance, learning to appreciate the diversity of perspectives, lifestyles, and approaches to common challenges that characterize any healthy society. The various businesses, organizations, and informal social groups that make up their civic life have found ways to accommodate difference while maintaining sufficient coherence and cooperation to address shared needs and pursue common goals. The seasonal celebrations and community festivals that punctuate their shared calendar have evolved into expressions of acceptance and appreciation rather than attempts to impose uniform values or eliminate cultural differences. These gatherings serve as reminders of what unites them despite their individual peculiarities and limitations, creating opportunities for mutual recognition and support that strengthen social bonds without requiring conformity or artificial harmony. The natural environment that surrounds and supports their community provides ongoing lessons in acceptance through its demonstration of how complex ecosystems maintain balance and resilience through diversity rather than uniformity, through adaptation rather than resistance, through cycles of change that honor both stability and transformation. The seasons teach patience and trust in natural processes, while the weather provides daily practice in accepting conditions beyond human control, while still taking appropriate action to respond effectively to whatever circumstances arise. The various crises and challenges that periodically test their community's resilience have become opportunities for demonstrating and developing collective acceptance, showing how groups of diverse individuals can come together to address serious problems without requiring complete agreement about causes or solutions. These experiences have taught them that effective cooperation depends more upon shared commitment to mutual support than upon identical analysis of problems or uniform approaches to addressing them. The emergency response systems and helping networks that activate during difficult times illustrate the possibility of creating meaningful community care through acceptance of human limitation, combined with commitment to doing whatever is possible within those limitations. The recognition that no individual can solve every problem or help in every way has paradoxically increased rather than decreased the overall level of mutual support available during times of need. The artistic and cultural expressions that emerge from their community reflect this evolution toward acceptance through their celebration of imperfection, their exploration of beauty in unexpected places, their affirmation of meaning in ordinary experiences that might otherwise be overlooked or undervalued. The local musicians, writers, visual artists, and performers have learned to find inspiration in their immediate circumstances rather than waiting for ideal conditions or perfect materials. These creative endeavors serve important functions beyond individual expression, providing ways for community members to process difficult emotions and complex experiences, while also contributing to a collective culture that values authenticity over perfection, effort over achievement, participation over expertise. The recognition that everyone has something to contribute artistically has democratized creative expression, while also raising the overall quality of cultural life through increased engagement and appreciation. The economic activities that sustain their community have gradually adapted to reflect values of acceptance and sustainability rather than purely competitive success or unlimited growth. Local businesses have learned to find satisfaction in serving genuine needs and building lasting relationships with customers, rather than simply maximizing profits or expanding market share without regard for community impact or individual well-being. This evolution has created a local economy that prioritizes stability and mutual support over dramatic success or innovative disruption, recognizing that most people benefit more from reliable access to basic goods and services than from the excitement and uncertainty that accompany rapid economic change. The acceptance of modest success and gradual improvement has created space for more businesses to thrive, while also reducing the anxiety and competition that can undermine community cohesion. The various forms of entertainment and recreation available in Elmore have similarly evolved towards celebration of participation over performance, of enjoyment over achievement, of inclusion over excellence. The parks and recreational facilities serve as gathering places where people of all ages and abilities can find appropriate activities and social connections without pressure to demonstrate exceptional skill or commitment. These leisure opportunities provide essential balance for the more demanding aspects of daily life, while also creating context for developing acceptance of personal limitations and appreciation for simple pleasures that do not depend upon external validation or competitive success. The recognition that recreation should be restorative rather than stressful has improved both individual well-being and community harmony. The relationships and social bonds that give meaning to individual lives within their community have matured toward forms of connection that honor both autonomy and interdependence, both individual authenticity and mutual support. People have learned to love each other, not despite their flaws and limitations, but because of the complete humanity that includes both strengths and weaknesses, both achievements and failures, both moments of wisdom and episodes of confusion. This evolution in relationship skills has created a social environment where people feel safer being authentic rather than performing idealized versions of themselves, where vulnerability is met with compassion rather than judgment, where mistakes become opportunities for learning and growth rather than sources of shame or rejection. The community has discovered that acceptance creates space for genuine improvement, while perfectionism often prevents the very changes it claims to desire. The family structures that provide foundation for individual development have adapted to accommodate the reality that healthy growth requires both security and freedom, both guidance and autonomy, both tradition and innovation. Parents have learned to provide support without control, while children have learned to accept guidance without surrendering their developing sense of individual identity and personal responsibility. These evolving family dynamics demonstrate that love can remain constant, even as relationships change to accommodate growth and development, that commitment can persist even when specific forms of connection must be modified to remain healthy and sustainable. The recognition that families serve their members best when they adapt to changing needs rather than insisting upon static arrangements has improved both individual satisfaction and family stability. In the end, the journey toward acceptance that characterizes the mature phase of life in Elmore reveals that peace comes not from eliminating all sources of difficulty or uncertainty, but from developing the skills and perspectives necessary for engaging with challenge gracefully, for finding meaning in imperfection, for discovering beauty in the midst of chaos and limitation. The residents of their community have learned that acceptance is not passive resignation but active embrace of reality as it is, combined with committed engagement in making whatever positive contributions remain possible within existing constraints. The Watterson family, in their chaotic love and their stubborn refusal to surrender to despair, has become a living demonstration that happiness does not require perfect circumstances, but rather authentic relationships. That meaning does not depend upon grand achievements, but rather upon daily choices to care for each other. That wisdom consists not in having all the answers, but in remaining curious and open to whatever lessons experience might offer. They have discovered that the imperfect life they actually share together is infinitely more valuable than any idealized existence they might imagine. that the present moment they are actually living contains more possibility for joy and connection than any future state they might hope to achieve, that the love they have learned to give and receive despite all their limitations provides foundation strong enough to support whatever challenges and opportunities the future might bring. Their acceptance is not the end of growth, but its beginning, not the cessation of effort, but its proper channeling, not the abandonment of hope, but its maturation into something more sustainable and realistic than naive optimism, yet more energizing and meaningful than cynical resignation. In learning to love what is while remaining committed to what might be, they have found the secret of authentic contentment that neither requires perfection nor settles for less than the full beauty and significance that conscious existence makes possible even in the most ordinary circumstances. And so we reach the end of our journey through the existential landscape of Elmore, where animated hearts grapple with very real questions about meaning, purpose, and the nature of existence itself. We have wandered through the corridors of consciousness where cartoon characters discover profound truths about identity and belonging, where the search for significance unfolds against backdrops of suburban normalcy that somehow contain infinite depths of philosophical complexity and emotional resonance. We have seen how even in a world of elastic physics and impossible logic, the deepest human concerns remain constant and inescapable: the need for love that transcends understanding, the search for purpose that gives meaning to effort, the fear of being forgotten that drives desperate attempts at significance, the hope that somehow, in all this beautiful chaos, our lives matter not because they achieve perfection, but because they express the irreducible miracle of consciousness, choosing to engage with existence despite all its uncertainties and limitations. Through the lens of animation, where transformation is possible and identity proves fluid, where death might be temporary, but love endures across all changes, where the absurd becomes routine and the routine reveals hidden depths of meaning, we have explored questions that haunt every conscious being who has ever wondered about their place in the grand scheme of things. Their significance in the face of cosmic indifference, their capacity to create meaning in a universe that offers no guarantee that such meaning will be recognized or rewarded. The Watterson family, in their chaotic devotion to each other and their stubborn refusal to surrender to despair, has shown us that wisdom comes not from solving all of life's mysteries, but from learning to dance gracefully with uncertainty. That peace emerges not from eliminating all sources of difficulty, but from developing the skills necessary for engaging with challenge as opportunity rather than obstacle. That love proves its worth not through the perfection of its objects, but through the consistency of its expression, regardless of circumstances. Gumball's journey from naive optimism through existential crisis toward mature acceptance illustrates the universal process of growing up, not just physically, but philosophically, learning that the questions matter more than the answers, that the search for meaning is itself meaningful, regardless of what ultimate truths it might or might not reveal, that the courage to keep asking difficult questions and the wisdom to keep loving imperfect people creates its own form of significance that needs no external validation to justify its value. Darwin's transformation from pet to person serves as a living metaphor for the possibility of radical growth and change that remains available to all conscious beings, willing to risk the safety of familiar limitations for the uncertain promise of authentic development, demonstrating that identity is not fixed destiny, but ongoing choice, that love can literally transform the nature of existence when it is offered and received with sufficient sincerity and commitment. Nicole's evolution from desperate controller to wise acceptor shows us that strength can manifest through surrender as well as through struggle, that the deepest forms of protection come not from eliminating all dangers, but from building resilience sufficient to weather whatever storms might arise. That the fiercest love sometimes expresses itself through the courage to let go rather than through the determination to hold on regardless of consequences. Richard's gentle wisdom teaches us that simplicity need not mean ignorance, that contentment with present circumstances can coexist with commitment to positive change, that the capacity for joy in ordinary moments might be the most sophisticated philosophical achievement available to conscious beings who understand both the preciousness and the temporary nature of all experience. Aeneas's struggle with premature awareness reminds us that knowledge without community can become burden rather than gift, that intelligence finds its highest expression not in solitary achievement but in service to understanding and connection, that wisdom consists not in having answers to every question, but in learning to ask better questions that open rather than close possibilities for growth and mutual support. The community of Elmore itself demonstrates that meaning emerges not from perfect harmony, but from the ongoing commitment to work through differences with respect and patience, that diverse perspectives and approaches to common challenges create strength rather than weakness when they are held within frameworks of mutual care and shared responsibility, that the simple act of remaining present to each other through all the chaos and beauty of existence transforms even the most ordinary communities into something approaching sacred space. The various crises and challenges we have explored, the fear of forgetting and being forgotten, the recognition of cyclical repetition, the fluidity of identity, the need for connection, the burden of knowledge, the search for purpose, the confrontation with mortality, all reveal themselves as different aspects of the same fundamental human condition, the simultaneous blessing and curse of being conscious beings capable of questioning our own existence while remaining embedded within circumstances we cannot fully control or completely understand. Yet, in facing these challenges together, in refusing to let awareness of limitation eliminate appreciation for possibility, in choosing love despite uncertainty and engagement despite imperfection, the residents of Elmore have discovered something profound about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to meaning, purpose, and value that transcends any particular philosophical system or religious doctrine. They have learned that meaning is not something to be discovered in the structure of reality itself, but something to be created through choices, relationships, and the ongoing commitment to treat existence as though it matters, regardless of whether that mattering can be justified through any objective or universal standard. They have found that purpose emerges not from grand achievements or perfect understanding, but from the simple practices of paying attention, caring for others, and remaining curious about the mystery of being alive in a universe that offers no guarantee of significance, but that clearly makes significance possible for those willing to create it. The existential crises that we have witnessed and explored serve not as reasons for despair, but as invitations to deeper appreciation of the miracle of consciousness itself, the extraordinary fact that universe has somehow produced beings capable of wondering about their place within it, of feeling love and creating beauty, and asking questions that have no simple answers yet that remain worth asking because the very act of asking them affirms something essential about the value and dignity of conscious existence. Rest now in the knowledge that even in uncertainty, even in the midst of existential dread and philosophical confusion, there is comfort to be found in connection, beauty to be discovered in imperfection, and peace to be achieved through acceptance of what cannot be changed, combined with commitment to changing what can be improved. The questions we have explored together may remain unanswered, but the love that asks them makes the asking worthwhile. The relationships that sustain us through the questioning make the uncertainty bearable, and the simple fact that we can wonder about meaning creates meaning sufficient to justify the wondering. The Watterson family endures not because they have found all the answers to life's deepest questions, but because they have learned to laugh together in the face of questions too large for any mind to fully comprehend. Because they have discovered that authentic relationships can create pockets of genuine significance even within the most repetitive circumstances. Because they have chosen to treat each other as precious and irreplaceable, regardless of whether such preciousness can be demonstrated through any external measure or cosmic validation. In their imperfect love, their resilient humor, and their stubborn refusal to surrender to despair, they show us that perhaps the meaning of existence is not something to be discovered through analysis or achieved through effort, but something to be lived through the daily practices of paying attention, caring for others, and remaining open to whatever possibilities each moment might contain for connection, understanding, and simple joy in the fact of being alive in a universe mysterious enough to contain both suffering and beauty, both meaninglessness and the capacity for creating meaning through conscious choice and authentic relationship. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler of the absurd, fellow questioner in the great mystery of existence. The questions may remain unanswered, but the questioning continues. And in that continuation lies all the hope and meaning that consciousness requires to justify its brief and precious participation in the ongoing story of a universe learning to know itself through beings capable of love, wonder, and the courage to keep asking why any of this matters when the very act of asking demonstrates that it does.